Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto X Emma Frost in Marvel. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by THISPAGEHASPEENABANDONED 93 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. 1. Naruto Uzumaki. The place, Calvary Hospital. The date, to all superhumans, 3 months since the tragedy of M-Day, where Scarlet Witch had lost control of her powers after changing the world twists. The situation today, unknown. The world would be getting a wake-up call though, soon enough. This much was sure. So what have we got Mike? A doctor ironically named Doc asked the intern that was checking on a slightly charred blonde teenage boy. He had unruly blonde hair and 3 slashes on each cheeks. Looking like whiskers. His ethnicity was an obvious blend of Caucasian and Asian, his eyes only having a slight almond shape to them. The burns were slowly dying down, healing even, making the doctor narrow his eyes slightly, while the African-American intern, Mike, shook his head and sighed. Ops dropped him off, Mike said as he checked the heart monitor on the blonde's left, said he was in that fire off of East Avenue. I heard that pyro was the cause of it. See how his burns are healing. I think he has a healing factor. Doc simply replied as he glared with narrowed eyes at the blonde, well, we don't have to worry about his kind anymore. Get me some adrenaline. Whoa, wait a minute Doc, Mike said stepping back in shock before looking at the kid in the bed, he just needs some morphine at most. The doctor narrowed his eyes at Mike and smiled as he said, mutants are a dying breed Mike. Why not just help them along? In the words of the good Reverend Stryker, man is the son of God. Mutants are the son of Satan. Doc Mike gasped out. Doc was one of the nicest people he had ever known. After M-Day though, Doc had changed, becoming colder and less friendly. He had had several mutants in her before today, but never had he been so harsh before. Cold maybe, but never harsh enough to kill someone. The doctor had a valid reason to despise mutants though, not that his excuse would make up for taking a life. His wife and daughter had been killed on M-Day, and if that wasn't enough, his life was saved by a mutant. Not just any mutant, a mutant that could heal. A mutant that could end his career. He wouldn't stand for it anymore. Doc looked at Mike and was about to bark at him to get some adrenaline when the heart monitor started to beep loudly, making both humans look at the blonde. He was breathing heavily and starting to twitch in his sleep. His eyes snapped open, an unreal red that made both doctors jump back. He darted his eyes between the two. To them, he looked scared. Then, to both of their surprise, he leapt at the doctor. The blonde clad in only a smock managed to somehow drive Doc through the wall with a roar. His eyes a dark red and red aura flickering around him. Fists smacking against flesh was what Mike heard and witnessed. Screams slowly became muffled as blood splattered onto the intern's face. When the screams died and whimpering crossed with groaning came from Doc, Mike backed away in fear as a red cloak-covered blonde with furious red eyes walked back through the hole in the wall. Mike swallowed as he tripped over a group of cords and scooted away from the blood-covered boy. Please don't hurt me. I'll do anything. Mike finally managed to squeak out. The blonde stared at him for a moment before his red eyes died down to a very light pink before darkening to purple and finally stopping on a light blue. Spare clothes? He asked with a hoarse throat. With a new set of doctor scrubs on and a doctor cloak, the blonde closed his eyes before changing his appearance. Mike was wide-eyed. This guy had all the abilities of the A-listed heroes. The blonde nodded his thanks to the intern and left through the back exit. He left through the alleyways, ignoring the feeling of being watched. The blonde finally stopped about 3 blocks to the west, just outside the borough of Brooklyn. He sat down in the alley he was in, remembering how he arrived in the hospital. Or trying to anyway. The flash went through his mind. Images, voices, etc., etc. It was a flashback moment in its fullest, despite being fragmented. Good morning, MK36. Your solitary confinement is over, a kindly old man said. He had a lab coat on and looked Asian, similar to him, a white beard on his chin and balding, revealing some liver spots. Professor Saratobi, the blonde greeted with a nod from the spot on the wall he was chained to. The old scientist smiled as he swiped his access card and entered the cell of the experiment. You know, Saratobi said, moving to unlock the chains holding the blonde in place, your father, Mr. Namikaze, would be very upset with me if you happened to get hurt by someone like Mr. Marino. Father is mad at me, isn't he? MK36 asked as his head hung. Saratobi chuckled, making the teen look at him again. Far from it, the scientist said through his chuckles, making the blonde smile slightly as Saratobi's eyes glistened with pride. He told me he couldn't be any prouder. Withstanding interrogation for 32 hours and then breaking free nearly 10 minutes later. Amazing. Simply amazing, Naruto-kun. The flash ended and the blonde shook his head to clear it of the headaches. Apparently he forgot exactly how he ended up in that fire. The unruly-haired blonde then sighed and stood, walking in the direction of a department store's back door. Creating more of his red aura around his finger and then shaping it into that of the key of the lock, breaking in effortlessly. He went directly to the men's department and grabbed a pair of black jean shorts, a dark orange belt, and a dark blue shirt with an orange frog on the front, hopping across with the words "do the hop." Underneath it, also in orange. The blonde then went to the shoes area and pulled a pair of grey Nike sneakers on, before slipping back out the back door and locking it again, making it so it was like he was never there. Unfortunately for him, the building right behind him happened to be a bank. A bank that was being robbed by a superhuman. A certain superhuman that weighed about 3 tons, muscled like no one could believe, and went by the name of Rhino. Who just exploded from the back wall into the alley via charging through it. Fuck. Hot damn, that was badass. One of Rhino's accomplices shouted at the burst. The alarms rang, and the 3 accomplices ran into the alleyway, the hulking grey mass known as Rhino right behind them. Naruto narrowed his eyes and sent some of his red aura to cover to his feet, dropping the cover he had on himself. The blonde calmly walked up the side of the wall and followed the wannabe robbers. He was surprised when a voice entered his head, a feminine one. "Are you with Rhino?" the woman asked. Naruto narrowed his eyes and stopped walking as he heard the faint sounds of a jet engine rumbling overhead. Remembering his training that he had gotten from a psychic named Inoichi, the blonde thought back, "No. My girls tell me you're in A class. Unnamed and unknown abilities aside from the strong aura you give off. Care to share some details?" the woman asked. Naruto racked his brain as he tried to recall what psychic woman would be skilled enough to search through his defended mind. The blonde pushed back into the woman's thoughts, much to her surprise, before he was shot out by the psychic. He did get a name from her though. Emma Frost. An image of a complete drop-dead gorgeous blonde wearing a white spandex-like outfit entered his mind. Emma Frost, a deeper voice said in his head. Naruto grinned as it continued, A-class psychic. Body can turn into a diamond substance. Headmistress of Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. The 3 girls she probably was speaking about were the Stepford Cuckoos. Triplet girls that were forged from a little bit of Frost's diamond heart and the most powerful entity in the universe, the Phoenix Force. The 4 of them together make for a hell of a psychic team. Tread carefully, kid. I'd rather not, Ms. Frost, Naruto thought back, making the woman aboard the Blackbird recoil in shock from the fact he learned her name. "Just tell me whether you want me to interfere with this little training thing you have going on." "How did you know?" Emma asked. Naruto grinned as the Blackbird's cloaking device dropped and the light shined down on Rhino and his accomplices. Because no one but Spider-Man would bother with Rhino aside from a rookie team. It was true. The blonde knew his super-villain stat so well it was an art form. It might have helped he had trained with Phantom X and knew almost every way there was to take down what he ranked for me to be villains. Rhino was a major D ranker, while his accomplices, being humans with fully automated weapons, were E ranked. Emma was dumbfounded as the new X-Men, consisting of Hellion, Rockslide, Prodigy, Elixir, Surge, and Mercury, all leapt down from the Blackbird's side door. Beast followed behind them, only to offer Surge, the newest leader since Hellion had botched a mission and they had almost lost Wallflower, assistance. Emma left the Blackbird controls to Scott Summers, her co-headmaster, lover, and X-Men leader alias Cyclops, to go to the door's window and get a look at the newly found mutant. She scanned the area for him before her eyes locked on a waving figure that was standing on the wall. "Yo." the boy thought as his waving hand dropped. Emma couldn't help but do several double takes, making the boy grin widely. "Who are you?" she asked with more force as she tried to pry into his mind. A sudden red flash coming from the boy's head made Emma grab her now throbbing head and glare at the tisking teen. "Now that isn't nice, ma'am," the boy said with a slight respectful tone in his thoughts, "at least I'm not picturing you naked and making you see that as you try to pry into my head." "You're doing it now, aren't you?" Emma asked him as her face dropped into a scowl. The teen's stance shifted uncomfortably before glancing down at the scene of the fight, his silence answering her question and making Emma even angrier. "Your students need help," he commented, making Emma turn her attention to the fight and pinching the bridge of her nose in frustration. Rockslide's limbs were being tossed at the non-telepathic members, making Hellion's job as defense player that much harder. Elixir had gotten hit by one of the human boulders' flying fists and was currently unconscious in a dumpster. Beast was doing his best to keep the 3 acrobatic gunmen from getting any serious wounds on the students, while Prodigy put pressure on a bullet wound on his arm as he hid near the unconscious Elixir, waiting for his friend to wake up. Mercury and Surge were doing their best to dodge and counterattack Rhino's actions, only to attack each other and knock themselves out. "Oh shit," Emma said, preparing to open the doors when the teen's thoughts came to her again because she had forgotten to sever their connection. "Tell them to stand back," he thought in a no-nonsense tone as the headmistress blinked in surprise when he phased out of sight, reappearing behind Beast. "Need some help, Mr. McCoy?" Naruto asked Beast, making the blue-fuzzed man stop in his fight and look at the blonde behind him. "No, it can't be," Beast said in shock while the blonde grinned, revealing fanged teeth, and his eyes turned red. He crouched as his red aura started to cover him, the aura taking the shape of his body only with claws and a tail. The three humans all locked their eyes on him before they widened them in fear. "What in the fucking name of God? What the hell is that fucking thing? I didn't sign up for this shit, man." Naruto's grin never dropped as he said in a menacing tone, "Let's go wild." He vanished from sight, Hank McCoy watching him with wide eyes. The fuzz-covered mutant was in complete shock and awe as the red aura-covered blonde destroyed the three wannabe robbers. The last time he had seen the blonde was almost 12 years ago, maybe even 13. He was the son of the most infamous pro-mutant scientist in Japan, Mr. Minato Namikaze, and the most well-known pro-mutant lawyer, Mrs. Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. Uzumaki, Beast thought with shock evident on his face, is actually alive. "Come on." Rhino Guffrod as Hellion, who was struggling in his grasp, started hacking blood. "I'm barely squeezing you, mutant. Even the webhead can withstand this. But can you withstand this?" A teen's voice cried, making Rhino look up in time to be hit in the face with an extended and expanded red fist the size of a taxi cab. Rhino dropped Hellion as he was sent flying towards the street. The grey monster skidded into the street and crashed into a parked off-duty bus. The new X-Men all stood with groans and watched a strange blonde teen rush after Rhino. "Don't just sit there," a voice cried. The students all turned to see Beast wrapping a knocked-over lamppost around the three humans before looking back at the teens. "Go help him." "Yes sir, Mr. McCoy." The students chorused through their groans. They rushed after the blonde, hoping to help him stop Rhino. When they reached the street though, they honestly wanted to help Rhino stop him. He was beating the stuffing out of the genetically engineered man with red aura covering his fists. Something at the base of his tailbone was bubbling along the aura. The villain was clearly unconscious, so much so that he wasn't even twitching as Naruto slammed fist after fist into his head. "Yo, Prodigy." Hellion whispered, "What is that?" "I don't know, Keller," Prodigy whispered back before starting to inch towards the blonde, attempting to gain information from him while still holding his sore arm. Elixir had healed it as best he could while dazed. A certain rock-headed teen decided to take the direct irrational approach and gently remove the blonde from the half-dead villain. "Brah." Rockslide roared as he detached his left arm and threw it at the blonde. The boy simply turned his head and looked at the oncoming fist, scoffing inwardly and batting it aside with his tail. A presence filled his head, making the blonde snarl and look up at the blackbird, the students following his glare, where Emma Frost was standing in the doorway. "He's half dead. Get off of him." Emma shouted through her mental link with the boy. Naruto scowled before looking back at Rhino. The large Brooklyn man groaned in pain, his face now uglier than roadkill on the highway, and Naruto's eyes narrowed. "That deserves it," the blonde growled as though he needed to feel Rhino's blood on his hands, and as he raised his fist to deliver a final blow. The red aura on his arm was intense enough that it made it seem as though his flesh had melted away. It had, but the watching teens and teachers weren't aware of that. They were only aware of the energy growing in his fist. "Scott!" Emma shouted, the headmaster rushing into action. Before Naruto's energy finished gathering, Cyclops shot a beam of energy from his eyes directly into the blonde's side, sending him through the bus. Rhino merely dropped to the ground with another groan. Naruto saw only dark after being shot through the bus. Name is Naruto Uzumaki, Beasts, also known as Dr. Henry McCoy, his father's close friend and his godfather, voice echoed into his ears as he regained consciousness. Feigning unconsciousness, Naruto listened in on the conversation. "I thought he was long dead for about 12 years. You're sure he wasn't a mutant, Hank?" Scott's voice had asked. Naruto's mind was given information on the headmaster via his Killing Yahoo's utility universal brain implant, or Kyuubi, or Kyu as he sometimes called it, for short. Scott Summers, Kyuubi said, known as Cyclops due to his concussive-powered laser eyes, and leads the X-Men. Once married to Jean Grey Phoenix before the Phoenix incident. A younger brother, Alexander Summers, known as Havok. Havok is similar to Cyclops that he can also fire concussive energy, but with more control, from his hands. Havok's control comes with a simply put price. Discharge or die. The blue-furred man shook his head in the negative, the sound of his mane swishing made Naruto cut Kyuubi off. "I'm 100% positive of it," the scientist said to the headmaster Mistress and Logan. The berserker of the X-Men, Wolverine, had immediately smelt a new scent when the Blackbird returned. Hoping it was that of his clone younger sister, Laura, Logan rushed to Scott's office, only to be mentally redirected by Emma to the infirmary. "So what would you say he is now, Fuzzball?" Logan asked with a raised eyebrow. Hank sighed. "Optinex experiment." If Naruto could have opened his eyes and watched them, he would have seen them all widen their eyes before glancing at his prone form worriedly. Not for him, but for the other students. Already, a certain telepath was thinking of how to get rid of the blonde hazard for the greater good of her students. Before you ask, Logan, Hank continued, regaining everyone's attention, no. There is no trace of your DNA. His healing factor is stronger than yours, though. Logan blinked before chuckling loudly, which erupted into laughter. Once he had calmed down, Logan looked back at Hank. He said, I'm sorry, but could you knock the fucking jokes off, fuzzball? I'm not joking, Hank said in a completely serious voice. His healing factor was at work when I made it to his side on the other side of the bus. Halfway finished healing him. The 3 senior X-Men all felt their jaws pop open. Logan was the first to shake himself from their stupor and let out a low whistle as he gazed back at the slumbering blonde. Seeing his facial muscles twitch under his gaze, the Canadian smirked and said, Sleeping Beauty was faking. The other 3 looked at Logan before following his gaze and seeing the blonde sit up with a scowl. Sell out, Naruto growled at Logan, earning a chuckle from him. The blonde then looked to the one wearing sunglasses and his eyes flashed red. Throwing the covers off of himself, not realizing he was only in his boxers, Naruto stormed over to Scott and glared at him with narrowed eyes. Why did you shoot me? He asked through a growl. Logan smirked, already liking the blonde, while Emma, Scott and Hank all looked at him threateningly or cautiously. You were going to kill him, Scott said in a tight voice. Naruto arched a brow. So? That doesn't excuse you from shooting me, eyeballs. Scott had no rebuttal for that statement. His mind had gone blank as the team before him, much like Logan's clone Laura, was obviously trained to not care for the loss of life. His mouth opened and shut as he tried to form a logical rebuttal, failing as he also tried to defend his own actions, other than because I was told to. You can't just kill someone, Mr. Uzumaki, Emma spoke up in Scott's defense, making the glasses-wearing headmaster sigh in relief of being out from under the spotlight. Naruto scoffed and turned to her. Oh please, he said with a sneer, what I do compared to you mind readers is much kinder than when you fuck with their minds and break them. People heal from physical damage in less than 6 months, if they aren't dead, at most, but a broken mind can take years or decades even to heal. Now tell me, which would you rather have happened to you? Emma stepped back with wide eyes as though she was slapped. She had never once thought of it that way, but not willing to admit that to this boy, she narrowed her eyes and put her hands on her hips. How dare you, Yao, you little monster. Naruto's eyes glowed dark red, and the aura grew around him as his anger spiked. Say it again. I dare you to say it again. Beast and Logan immediately leapt into action, tackling the blonde to the ground as he thrashed around snarling. Emma immediately looked at Scott with a we have to talk. Now look. The red glasses-wearing headmaster sighed and looked at the 2 brutes of the team, struggling to hold down the blonde teen, before following her to her office. Calm down, Naruto. Hank shouted as the boy thrashed, God, where is Peter when you need him? God damn it. Logan snarled when Naruto drove his elbow into the senior mutant's nose, breaking it. Naruto roared his anger, the roar echoed through the school, attracting the attention of most of the school's inhabitants. The new X-Men and a few others appeared at the doorway just in time to see the almost naked blonde teen that nearly killed Rhino throw the infamous Wolverine through the bulletproof glass and tossing the agile beast into the wall, causing it to crack. What is going on in here? A man with a Russian accent asked. He froze when he saw Logan groaning and getting to his feet while Beast was in a heap on the ground, unconscious from the throw. Instantly he was covered with metallic skin. Iter Peter Rasputin, Aka Colossus, Kyuubi said as the red shroud covered Naruto defensively, his skin transforms into pure organic steel. According to his dad it will be a pain for you to get through, kid. Thanks a lot, asshole, Naruto scowled as his eyes narrowed. Colossus charged at him, tackling him through the weakened wall. The new X-Men all exchanged looks before looking at Surge, who sighed, sick of being looked at as the leader, and said, let's go help Colossus. The strong boy you are, Colossus said as he backhanded the boy. Naruto snarled, his eyes flashing a bright red, before he dropped to all fours and charged, gripping onto Colossus with his clawed hands and knocking him onto his back. Colossus grunted when he fell to the floor, creating a sizable dent before pushing his feet into Naruto's stomach, kicking him away. Colossus then kipped up to his feet and charged the blonde that was now shaking his head. Colossus tried to hit him with a haymaker, only for the blonde to suddenly raise his left arm and block the attack. Naruto's right hand wrapped around Colossus's neck, choking the Russian, and he slid his foot behind the back of the metallic man's. The new X-Men, except Elixir, who stayed behind to check on Logan and Beast, were just in time to see their second most difficult teacher to defeat in a spar get dropped onto his back and then a red aura-covered elbow drilled into his chest. Peter gasped as his heart stopped for a second, making his mutation stop before it resumed and he passed out. Holy Christ, Prodigy said, making the teens all look at him in shock, Hesh is way better than us. I doubt that, let's take him down. Santo, with me. Hellion barked before Surge could stop him. The rock-skinned teen rushed at the blonde, his fist cocked back. Naruto turned his head and got information about the two red-clad teens. Kyuubi scoffed, Julian Keller Aka Hellion. Class B telekinetic. Santo Vakoro Aka rock slide. Class C rockman body manipulator. Hellion probably controls rockslide's limbs after he separates them. Take him down and then go for the one of Ben Grimm, kid. Gladly, Naruto growled to no one, his inner voice lost on everyone save for Prodigy. The psychic know-it-all for a moment gasped as he heard the voice in Naruto's head. Wait. He tried to stop the two from rushing him, to no avail. Rockslide launched his fist at the blonde, only for it to be smacked aside. As Kyuubi predicted, Hellion redirected the fist back at the red aura-covered blonde. Naruto growled and brought his fist back before driving it through Rockslide's fist, shattering it into pieces. He then rushed towards Hellion, the teen paling as he approached, before tackling him to the ground. He growled at the boy, frightening the telekinetic, before head-butting him with his enhanced strength. Hellion was knocked out instantly, as well as having a large growing goose head on his face and a shattered nose. The blonde stood and shook the daze off, healing the damaged brain cells, before turning towards a one-armed rockslide. With a feral grin, Naruto taunted him with a come-on gesture and said, "Bring it on, cockslide." Rockslide felt his eye twitch and roared as he charged the nearly nude blonde. The new X-Men watched, too frozen in awe, as Naruto easily sidestepped Rockslide and tripped him. As Santo tried to get back to his feet, Naruto backed up before rushing at the Rockman. He leapt slightly and delivered a head-severing dropkick to the right of Santo's face. Ow, 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 ow. Rockslide yelped as his head rolled away from his body with a few bounces. Well, at least now he knew his head could be detached without dying. Naruto chuckled darkly and turned to the rest of the students, a grin on his face. Who's next? He asked as the adrenaline kept pumping through him. Mercury and Surge hesitated while Prodigy held his hands up and took a step forward. We don't want to fight, the African-American teen said in a calm manner. Naruto pouted, unknowingly making Mercury blush, the only evidence on her face is it took on a slight red hue. Why not? Naruto whined, his hands twitching eagerly as he looked over the students. He asked for information on the three in front of him, and like always, Kyuubi delivered. Naruto's eyes went to Surge as the implant spoke, Noriko Noriyashita, Aka Surge. An electropath. Can drain electricity from the air around her and use it to enhance her speed, or discharge it in bursts. She'd be fun to play with, eh kid? Next, Naruto grunted quietly, making the two girls blink in confusion, while Prodigy swallowed as he listened in on Naruto's thoughts. Naruto looked at Prodigy, making the boy sweat as he heard Caillou speak, David L.A. Naka Prodigy. The boy has a subconscious telepathy, learning everything that goes on as long as he is in the same room. I can tell he's listening in now. A shitty power if you ask me. Loses whatever information he obtains after the connection is lost. Well, Davy boy, what do you think of my analysis? It's rather accurate, David said quietly, making the girls even more confused, while Naruto chuckled. Caillou happens to be the best there is, Naruto said with a grin, the girls completely lost now. Naruto's eyes went to Mercury, whose face turned a darker shade of pink under his gaze. Kyuubi growled, oh, she's nice, kid. I like her file a lot. Insert perverted chuckle Cecily Kincaid, Aka Mercury. She's not entirely human anymore, instead being more along the lines of an extremely attractive humanoid made of non-toxic mercury. She doesn't need to breathe or eat. Look at that, already she's the opposite of the human vacuum that you are. I say you take a crack at her, hint hint, wink wink. Shut up, Caillou, Naruto growled, looking away in embarrassment while David cracked a smile. Surge and Mercury both looked between them in confusion when a roar from the resident wild man earned everyone's attention as Wolverine ran into the room, leaping at the blonde. Ah hell, Naruto said as his shoulders drooped and he hung his head. Wolverine leapt at Naruto when the blonde looked up at him with his red eyes and held his expanded hand out. The red aura around his body extended and latched around the Canadian, holding him in midair. You fucking twerp. Logan snarled as he struggled in Naruto's grip. Naruto arched a brow in amusement and calmly placed Logan on the ground. The Canadian narrowed his eyes in suspicion, his claws still out and his stance defensive. Naruto took a deep breath as he calmed down and the aura dissipated. He opened his eyes again to reveal a startling blue to the remaining new X-Men, save for Logan who had already seen them. Not feeling any more attacks about come from the boy, Logan slowly sheathed his claws just as Beast led Scott, Emma, and two more teachers into the room the blonde was fighting everyone in. Emma looked around and frowned at the sight of Peter and her two top students either unconscious or immobile. She silently told Elixir to check on the three, the golden boy eager to do so. She looked and was prepared to yell at the blonde, only to see him looking at the ground with a struggling look on his face. I am sorry, he said with a bit of force on his part. The heads of the school felt their jaws drop as he continued, don't get me wrong, Frost. I did mean what I said, but I am sorry I overreacted at your words. I do not enjoy any words such as that. I am a proud mutant, as that is all I have known to be. To be called a monster by one of my own, it's almost disgusting. Emma remained silent as Scott spoke and attempted to get the uncomfortable spotlight off of her. Did you knock Peter out? Alone? Yeah, it was kind of easy actually, the blonde admitted, rubbing the back of his head. I didn't have to use my more dangerous attacks. Lucky for him. The two heads of the school blinked in confusion before Naruto raised his arms to cover his chest. What type of mutant, save for the Juggernaut, can knock Peter Rasputin, the Colossus, unconscious without a single fatal blow? They looked at the blonde as verbal shiver escaped his lips. Can I get some clothes or something? Naruto asked, I've just realized I'm naked again. Do. New teacher. Naruto found himself once again in the infirmary, now fully dressed in his clothes, with three platinum blonde girls that were immensely attractive. He would have spoken to them and asked why they were in there if they weren't trying to breach his mind, something that ticked him off about telepaths. They had no manners, what so fucking ever. He sighed as Kyuubi worked hard to keep them all out of his inner thoughts and memories, the strain slightly affecting the blonde boy. You can just ask if you want to know about me, Frost, Naruto sneered to no one. In her office, Emma Frost scowled and resumed trying to dig up her own information on the blonde via computer. She had convinced Hank that the Stepford Cuckoos were checking for mental damage while she drew up a file for him so he could be a student. Both were lies, even Beast knew it, but he also was curious about what the boy had been through, so he allowed it. Smug little prick, Emma grumbled. The Cuckoos all transferred her thoughts to the blonde accidentally, and he chuckled. You know, Naruto said to the three psychics, you aren't going to get anywhere this way. Is that so? Phoebe, the one who introduced herself to be Phoebe, asked. That is not, Celeste said, what do you suggest then? Well you Kolna, never mind, the teen said with a shake of his head, you'll never go for it. Tell us, Mindy said as the three all narrowed their eyes at him. The whiskered teen grinned back at the three of them. You could ask me nicely if you want to get in my head, Naruto said as he rose his finger, and maybe, just maybe, I'll have my Biju back off. Biju? The three girls chorused in confusion. Naruto immediately realized his mistake and shut up. The three Cuckoos backed off from his mind and spoke amongst themselves, via mind link of course, before turning back to the boy. With discomfort written on their faces and the image of a disbelieving Emma Frost in their minds, Mindy started, Naruto Uzumaki. Let us in your mind, Phoebe spoke. Naruto glanced at Celeste, knowing she would be the dealmaker or breaker. Please. Celeste managed to get out through her mouth. Naruto grinned. Well that wasn't so hard now was it? He asked them, earning glares from the girls as they knew he somehow knew they had issues showing emotion after the deaths of their sisters. The blonde readjusted his seating and placed his hands in his lap, one overlapping the other, before he shut his eyes and took a deep breath. As he exhaled, he could feel the three enter his mind, the faint evidence of a fourth following. Naruto's mindscape. What is this place? Emma asked herself as they walked through a tunnel filled with pipes and water covering the floor. It looks like a sewer. A voice finished for her. The four psychics all turned to see the teen leaning against the pipes with a bowl in his hand, chopsticks in the other. He slurped up the noodles in the bowl and hummed in pleasure as the food went down his throat. Yeah well, you'd understand if you'd been through what I've been through. A self-manifestation. Phoebe gasped out, her sisters also shocked from this development. People usually had some form in their consciousness, but few were hardly aware of them. It was rare to find someone that was. Naruto chuckled and placed the chopsticks in the now empty bowl, snapping his fingers and willing it away, before he turned to them and outstretched his arms and greeting them with, welcome to my mind. Your mind is a sewer? Emma asked as she crossed her arms. Naruto stuck his tongue out at her and pulled down on his bottom eyelid as well as flipping her off. While she fumed silently, Naruto smirked and turned around. Come on then, he said, time to meet the real brains of the operation. Naruto led them all through the sewer, only pausing briefly when they stepped in front of two doors, one marked 5 and one marked 80 stared at them for a brief second before continuing, making the following four girls all blink. The blonde stopped again in a large dark area, soon to be filled with a large red light. The Cuckoos and Frost shielded their eyes with their arms until the light died down. In front of them now was a fox that was the size of a horse, 9 tails flowing behind it. Naruto was petting it affectionately on the head and turned back to them, his eyes now the ruby red orbs that were the only warning he had before he attacked. This is killing Yahoo's utility universal brain implant, Naruto told them, Kyuubi, or Kyu for short. He's the one that tells me what I need to know when I need to know it. Oh great, Kyu said as it opened a single slitted red eye and looked over the newcomers, more blondes. And they're telepaths. What a pain in my non-existent ass you are, Kit. Oh, shut up, Naruto replied with an eye roll, you keep bitching about not having any company, and when I bring some, you bitch about em. Make up your damn mind. Umbus, Caillou growled. No ass, Naruto snapped back, effectively silencing the AI before looking back at the dumbfounded telepaths. Smiling at their odd states, Naruto asked, "You alright, Frost? I mean, surely you've met a brain-implanted jaunty upgrade, right?" "The what?" Emma and the cuckoos chorused. Naruto groaned while Kyuubi chuckled as he started to explain. Brain-implanted jaunty upgrade, Biju, is a type of artificial intelligence implanted into mutants raised at the lower executive Anti-Friends of Humanity facility, or LEAF, Caillou stated, its words blowing the telepath's minds. "LEAF is where I was designed, created, perfected and implanted into the kit here. For some reason, my creator designed me to take on the personas of a kitsune, possibly because of his wife's love for mythology revolving around the beast, thus explaining my nickname for him. All other information on my symbiotic relationship with Kit is classified." "An artificial intelligence?" Phoebe gasped. "We thought Danger was the only one," murmured Mindy. "Apparently we were wrong," concluded Celeste. Emma Frost could hardly comprehend what she was hearing. Another question came to her mind and she looked at the blonde teen with whiskers on his cheeks. "What about his powers?" Emma asked with narrowed eyes. Caillou looked at Naruto, who shrugged and stretched his arms. A light yawn escaped his mouth, a small yip following, earning the attention of the Stepford cuckoos. "Its powers seem to be similar to telekinetic abilities and a physical manifestation of spiritual and physical energy which we call aura," the AI said. "So far, the kid has managed to create a physical cloak, as you've seen, taking the shape of a beast. He loses control of his bloodlust when a second tail starts to form." "What about his healing factor?" Frost continued, not noticing the drooping eyelids of the blonde in question or the fact I saw him walking on a wall. "What are those abilities from?" "The same byproduct," Caillou answered, noticing it's his host's drowsy state as his head drooped for a moment, snapping back up as one of the AI's tails brushed against his calves. The cuckoos all noticed the teen's exhaustion, even if their teacher and idle hand. Mindy even cracked a smile at his tired childish state, making her sisters all glance at her in amusement as they all felt a brief emotion they had felt long before. Celeste and Phoebe narrowed their eyes at Mindy, who looked away. "Anything else you want to ask us?" Naruto asked with slight annoyance as he sat cross-legged in midair, red aura keeping him in the air, "'Cause now I'm feeling tired." As the blonde yawned, Kyuubi looked over at him before looking back at the telepaths with narrowed eyes. As the 9 tails slowly wrapped around the blonde, who was starting to look more childish by the minute with each yawn, the AI spoke, "I think it'd best you leave. Now." "You have no right to tell us what to do," Emma started, stopping when the AI narrowed its eyes and the tails completely covered the blonde from their sight. "You have no right, bitch." Kyuubi snarled, growing to the size of a 10-story building, shoving its snout in her face, making her take a step back and activate her diamond defense as it snarled at her. "You may rule the school and minds out there, but in here, I rule supreme. Do you understand me?" "If you think I'm going to leave because," Emma started, once again being interrupted as the red aura began pouring from the tails of the AI and started wrapping around the neck of the headmistress and her students, choking them. "I asked if you understood me." The fox-like AI snarled, its eyes now completely red as the tails tightened around their necks. "Why yes," Emma and the cuckoos gasped out, "will you understand?" "Then leave." Kyuubi shouted, its eyes glowing a dark red. "Reality. Infirmary." The cuckoos all stumbled back, falling into the arms of Logan, Scott, and Hank respectively as Emma sat up in the chair next to Naruto's bed. The headmaster of the academy assisted the 2 teachers with laying the telepathic triplets in nearby beds as Emma stood and recollected the events that had just happened. Scott returned to Emma's side, letting her lean into him as she looked down at the whiskered blonde. "What happened, Emma?" Scott asked his lover. "I entered your office to ask about what grade I should give David on his English exam, only to see you slumped on the ground, gasping for air." "The boy has an AI in his head," the blonde woman commented quietly as her hand went to her very sore throat, "and it would be best if we tried to, I dread speaking these words, enroll him into the school." "Wait, hold up," Scott said, fully comprehending her words as his brows furrowed. "He has an AI? You mean like Phantom X and Eva?" "Damn," a gruff voice commented from the right. The 2 looked to see Logan looking at the blonde with a slightly saddened look. Scott instantly understood. Logan lost his life to Weapon X, and ever since he's had to deal with a psychotic ex-lover, a father-brother figure, a clone little sister, other Weapon X rejects, assassins, Rouge Hydra operatives, and then some. Emma on the other hand didn't. She cared only for the safety of her students, and she hardly trusted Logan due to his past, but the blonde in front of her needed help, even if he had complete control over his powers. It was his mindset that needed help. She turned to the 2 in front of her before announcing a staff meeting in her office telepathically to the other teachers. A few moments later, all 7 of the teachers were gathered in her office. Amara Akila, Aka Magma, the foreign language teacher, sat next to Danielle Moonstar, Aka Mirage, the physics teacher. The two were former X-Men, having retired to teaching the new batch and only going back into action under intense circumstances. Emma explained to everyone what she and the Cuckoos had experienced in the mind of their new resident. When she had finished, everyone was astounded, save for Logan, though he was still shocked. "So what do you suggest, Frost?" Logan asked her. Emma sighed and looked at the ground. "Perhaps don't enroll him. His artificial intelligence makes up for his intellect and who knows what type of schooling he got at this leaf. Maybe we should try and give him a job as a student teacher," Amara suggested. The others all blinked at their youngest coworker's suggestion and thought it over. It was a good idea. "What class though?" Danielle asked. Instantly, Wolverine and Colossus grinned. "You want me to be a combat teacher to kids my age?" Naruto asked as he sat back in his bed, a glass of water in his hand. "You realize I will teach them to kill if necessary." "You won't," Emma shot back sternly. Naruto smirked her way and leaked a bit of his aura out, allowing it to take the shape of a small fox perched on his shoulder. He looked at his newfound perched friend and asked, "Can you believe this shit?" "It's amusing, Kit. Very amusing, hello nurse." The fox said, its eyes locking on Amara. "Tell me you're the kid's age. Please tell me you're the kid's age." "And away you go, Baka," Naruto groaned with a shake of his head and cut the connection, making the apparition vanish. The blonde ran his hand through his hair before looking at his fellow blonde with his blue eyes. "Sorry about that, Miss Akila. Caillou means well, but me grandfather's influence on his design pops up every now and again." Amara giggled, "It's quite alright. I thought it was very flattering." "I'll be sure to tell him that," the blonde replied with a small grin before looking back at Emma. "I'll take the job. Teaching killing or not is up to whoever is teaching that day." He looked at Logan, who understood the hidden message within his words and nodded. The blonde grinned back before looking at Scott. "So, Shades, what's first on my agenda?" Hank stepped forward, offering him a vitamin that Naruto downed easily and cleared with a gulp of the water in his hand. He then hopped to his feet, rolling his neck and shoulders simultaneously before he was led to the danger room, which he entered alone. The observation center above holding most of the students, mainly the new X-Men and the other teachers. Emma approached the microphone and spoke into it. "This is just a simulation to see how you react in a combat situation. Your tasks are arranged from high priority to low priority and can be completed in any way you deem fit. The tasks are as followed. Eliminate the main threat, in this case being Kid Omega and Juggernaut. Save the downed Cannonball before he is killed by the approaching sentinels. You have 15 minutes. Naruto grinned, his aura activating in a blink of the eye, and he vanished in a blur of red towards the direction of Kid Omega. This surprised the new X-Men, who would have considered Cannonball the larger priority, followed by Juggernaut and then Kid Omega. Emma was surprised, expecting him to go for Juggernaut first, but was also impressed, while the other X-Men were just downright astonished. "Why go after Kid Omega?" Julian asked. "What about Cannonball? Or Juggernaut?" "It's a smart move," Colossus said as Naruto expanded his right arm into the size of a bus, slamming it into the Kid Omega and defeating it with ease. "Our comrade down there knows he is more than enough to take on the Sentinels and Juggernaut, his ability to create a type of armor around him, making for a good defense against physical attacks, but pure energy or telepathic attacks are his weak spot. Quite ingenious." "Kid smart," Logan said, taking a sip of his beer as Naruto blew a hole through one of the 3 sentinels surrounding Cannonball, knows not to waste time, and took Kid Omega out quickly, brutally, but quickly. "Damn," Santo grumbled as Naruto picked Cannonball up and threw him over his shoulder, carrying him to the designated safe zone, while the remaining sentinel tried to shoot him down, "and he's gonna be joining us, right?" "Wrong," Scott said, shocking the students, "he's going to be teaching you." "What?" The new X-Men all chorused in an outrage. Naruto dropped a Cannonball sim on the designated safe zone before checking the clock in his head. 5 minutes to take down the Juggernaut. Remember, his only weakness is similar to your own. How are you going to beat him? Blow his brains out. Naruto roared as he loosely clenched his left hand and started moving it quickly around his other hand, charging a small ball of red and blue energy in his aura-covered hand. The energy swirled around, forming a small circle, as the unstoppable man known as Juggernaut roared and charged at him. The blonde made a small leap, pulling his hand back before shoving it forward. "Raya!" Naruto roared, his red eyes practically glowing as his attack connected with the headpiece of the Juggernaut. The headpiece shattered, shocking the witnesses, and the boy's attack continued, brutally destroying the Sim Juggernaut head. Naruto panted, calming himself as his aura died down, and he fell to his knees. Around him the simulation of a destroyed battlefield vanished. 3 minutes and 53 seconds flashed on the display screen, Hank McCoy shaking his head in disbelief that the boy beat the X-Men's best time, both the individual high score and the team's. Logan highly approved of the event, smirking as he took another sip of his beer. Emma was disgusted, amazed, and intrigued by the boy's attack. Cyclops was impressed by the tactical assault, seeing possibilities emerge before him within the blonde. Peter approved of the boy's calm state, showing that the blonde had control over a grand portion of his emotions, but had to work on talking to himself. Amara had to pick her jaw off the ground, not seeing any teen cause that sort of destruction since, well, ever. Danielle was already going through possible simulations for him to go through to further test his will. The new X-Men and other students were just in shock. Naruto turned and looked up at the observation area, asking the question, what's next? Over the next 3 hours, Naruto completed simulation after simulation, beating the high scores with ease. Even in assassination prevention on the simulated Senator Kelly, the X-Men thought about testing to see if his personal feelings would get in the way of the prevention, went without a hitch for him. They were surprised when not only did he save the senator, but he had effortlessly captured the assassin without a chase. My God in heaven, Peter whispered as Naruto panted beneath them, having finished his 50th simulation in a row, what is he? That's enough for now, Naruto, Hank said into the mic, the blonde reverting to a neutral state before sitting down and meditating. Hank shook his head in disbelief, Minato you crazy bastard. He's definitely an Omega level, Logan grumbled, planning on introducing the blonde to a certain group of heroes later, we gotta make sure Fury doesn't sink his claws into him. Logan's right, Scott said, his eyes narrowed behind his shades, but he is going to need a designation. Warning, Code Red, warning, Code Red. The mansion's computerized voice rang through the area. Emma went silent as the cuckoos, who were watching the news and listening to the woman's observation of the blonde, telepathically told her what happened. Emma turned to the students and her peers said in a firm tone, everyone to the living room. Now. Logan, get Naruto suited up, we're going to need his help. Donnie, Amara, stay here with the kids. Everyone left without haste, the students all now concerned as the mansion continued to blare alarms. Scott and Hank looked at Emma, the telepath having a distressed look on her face. Someone has just blown up a human elementary school in Connecticut, she said, over 300 students were in that school. Scott pulled her into his embrace, her sobbing muted in his shoulder, and he turned to Hank, Logan, and the recently gathered Naruto, and said quietly, we're moving out in less than a minute. Hank, get him a suit. Logan, prep the Blackbird. Move. Naruto pulled at the collar of his sleeveless black shirt with red designs crossing the chest in an X. He was surprised when the collar adjusted on its own, remembering that Beast had called it a type of smart fibers that made up the suits. He wore fingerless gloves, the same black as his shirt and cargo pants, he was forced into the tights, but pulled the cargos on over them, and black and red steel-tipped boots. The blonde glared out the side of the Blackbird at the mob forming around the taped-off area, crying for the heroes that were pulling people out of the wreckage's blood. For good reason too, Emma had explained what happened. Open the hatch, he growled, Hank and Logan looking at the newest member of the X-Men with confusion. He glared at both of them and snarled, did I fucking stutter? Open the fucking hatch. Hank sighed before pressing the buttons near his console and opening the hatch, allowing Naruto to jump from the Blackbird and land quietly as his aura enshrouded him. Naruto ran towards the epicenter of the attack, wondering who would do such a thing, when he saw rubble move and a small hand stick out. The blonde went into action, pulling back on his aura until it only affected his strength and was no longer visible. He acted without haste, not noticing the growing reporters now locking onto his form, and ripped rocks and rubble away, inwardly swearing to kill whoever was responsible for this. When he finished, a banged-up 7-year-old girl, shielded by a door, was visible. She had short brown hair and green eyes, bruises covering her body. My God, Naruto muttered, his eyes shutting before looking at her with kindness resonating in the red orbs. He carefully picked her up bridal style and carried her to the ambulance and the EMTs working on them. He forced a small amount of aura to cover her leg, Caillou giving her a scan. She'll live. No serious damage. Can't say her mind's going to be okay, though, the AI stated. Naruto clenched his jaw and set the girl on the passenger seat of the ambulance, waving away one of the EMTs. He grabbed a cloth from one of the EMTs and poured some water from a Dasani bottle on it before carefully cleaning the dirt away from her bruises on her arms, as well as fighting back one of the many memories in his mind. Why? A quiet voice asked. The blonde looked at the girl, her eyes filled with tears and her voice hoarse. His eyes softened and he carefully cleaned some dirt away from her cheek. I don't know, he whispered back, but I will find out. That's a promise. He continued to assist the EMTs, his anger only would have grown had he gone to save more people, the green-eyed girl sticking to his side like glue. She watched as he made red aura cover his finger whenever he checked someone that came by and then told the EMTs who needed what and how much. Excuse me sir, a reporter asked from behind Naruto. Naruto wiped his forehead off with his arm and turned to face them. Yeah, what do you want? He asked. He looked around to see the other reporters slowly approaching when his eyes locked on someone trying to leave the area. Long white hair, a trench coat, and blue boots. The collar popped up alerted Naruto that this was someone dangerous. It's him. Caillou growled, the one that did this. The one that caused this destruction. He must have been hiding. He's limping at the bastard. Gladly, Naruto growled, his eyes glowing red as his aura covered him. People gasped and took steps back when he vanished in a red blur, reappearing in front of the man. Oh fuck, Nitro said as he tried to will some energy to explode into his hands. Stay back. I'll kill everyone here. Gives me more of a reason to kill you, Naruto snarled, a branch of his aura coming out and wrapping around his body, severely burning him. Nitro shrieked in pain while Naruto lifted the villain into the air. He looked at the mob and a smile crossed his face. Here's the one responsible. He shouted, now should he rot in prison, like the good ole Captain America would have him do? No. Was the collective response. Naruto grinned, his eyes glowing red. Death it is, then. He cheered, raising his hands and crushing them slowly. The energy around Nitro tightened, the man screaming all the while. People became sickened, some looked away, others cheered the blonde on. The X-Men, Captain America, Iron Man, and more heroes all rushed to the commotion, barely getting through the reporters and crowd. What are you doing? Iron Man, otherwise known as the Stark Industries head Tony Stark, shouted, you can't just kill him. Naruto tuned him out, his eyes narrowing, and he pulled his arms away with a roar, the villain known as Nitro being torn in half. People were shocked that he actually did it. Even more were horrified. Oh my god, Captain America, the super soldier from 1945 named Steve Rogers, whispered in disbelief. Soft grunting came from the crowd and the small girl pushed through, rushing to the blonde side and latching onto his leg. The heroes and humans alike were shocked when the blood-covered boy looked down at her, his powers vanishing instantly at her touch. Her eyes glowed a bright green as she looked up at him in concern. She's an absorber, Caillou said in awe while Naruto picked the girl up. She wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder with a yawn. Caillou continued his observations, if we have Frost give her a checkup, I believe we will find she has awoken her ex-genimizing. Sally. A woman cried, pushing through the crowd and gasping when she saw the girl hanging onto a blood-covered hero, more heroes staring in disbelief at the sight. Naruto looked at the girl before looking at Frost and then finally the mother of the girl, or who he assumed to be the mother. Ma'am, he said softly, we need to talk. Naruto moved towards her when a reporter approached and held a microphone to his face, a cameraman following. Sir. Sir, why did you kill Nitro when he should have been given a trial? The reporter asked. Naruto narrowed his eyes. What jail can hold a man that could explode at will? He asked with an edge to his voice, none. He was a threat to the world, a large one, even if he was only thinking small-time bank robberies and assassinations. We are better off without him, and although it doesn't bring the dead back, it gives closure to the group here. I know that many here, X-Men, Cappy, and the Tin Man don't approve of my actions, it had to be done. The blonde continued, talking to the nation directly and unknowingly giving a certain two heroes ideas, if this had been left alone, the government would have offered the prick a deal or some stupid shit like that. We shouldn't let powerless, or those with the inability to defend themselves against superhumans, have to worry about heroes arguing with politicians. It's pointless. Heroes give without asking, politicians promise but don't follow through, and normal people live in arrogance or a pretend world. Let the politicians deal with humanity. Personally, I think SHIELD should only intervene when shit hits the fan and heroes need help. Are you saying you approve of the hero registration law? A reporter asked. Naruto sighed, knowing he would be stuck in this position, while the mother of the girl in his arms watched him with worry. He silently swore against talking to reporters off before her replied. I don't care about the law, Naruto said honestly, it has its ups and downs, but I don't know enough about it to have a stand on it. In my honest opinion, the people should be able to know who to trust and who not to trust, but making it a law might be taking it too far. People close to a hero could be targeted if information like that was available. So you are saying that we should have a right to know who is who without risking the lives of innocents? Ben Riley, a reporter for the Daily Bugle asked with a smile, quite noble, but impossible isn't it? Hey, you're talking to a guy that knows somewhere out there is a man mutated by gamma radiation into a monster with a rage that rivals my own, Naruto snapped back with a grin, turning a more friendly face on the red-headed reporter, that sounds impossible, doesn't it? Touché, Ben chuckled before he asked the question everyone was wondering, by the way, what is your name? Naruto paused. A memory entered his mind. Dr. Saratobi smiled at him, he was at least 12 or 13, and 4 dead masked men lie around his body, blood decorating the boy and the ground. I'm impressed, Naruto-kun, the old scientist chuckled, it looks as though you had just gone through a warzone. You really are a one-man army, aren't you? As though you are one of the horsemen of the apocalypse. When you leave here, might I suggest a name for you? Opening his eyes, now blue since he had long calmed down, the blonde spoke softly, you can call me War. 3. War, Omni, and Famine. Thank you for saving my little girl, War, Sally's mother, a young woman in her early 20s, said as she took Sally back from the blonde. War stood with her on the sidelines as the reporters and crowd went back to watching the heroes help the injured, though still glancing back at the still blood-covered teen. The blonde teen grinned back at her and held his hand out, which was surprisingly clean, to which she took and shook his hand. "Anytime, Mrs." He started, failing to get a name from the brown-haired woman. "Just call me Maria." "Maria McTaggart," she said, shaking the mutant's hand. War arched a brow. "You wouldn't happen to be related to Amora McTaggart, would you?" he asked. Maria sighed dramatically as she took her hand back and smiled back at him. "Yes. I'm her niece," she replied, "and before you ask, no. I don't know if she is working on the cure for the M-Day fallout." "Not what I was gonna ask," War said to her, although that's a Mary was going to ask why no one, not Cyclops or Frost, hell, why Wolverine didn't recognize you. Maria giggled, "Probably because Charles and Maura never got around to introducing me to the X-Men. You're the first one I've ever met." "Well, I wouldn't say I'm a member," War admitted, "I just happen to be the most useful in this situation." "Either way, I'm grateful to you," Maria said with a smile before asking, "So what did you want to talk about?" War looked at the girl in Maria's arms before asking, "What do you know about her father?" "Oh him," Maria said as her smile fell, "I don't know his name, just some random guy I had a fling with during a party about 8 years back." "Why?" Bohr sighed and crossed his arms and looked around before leaning in and whispering, "She's a mutant." Maria remained quiet before holding on to her daughter protectively. What do you mean?" Bohr sighed, knowing this would be difficult to explain, and looked around for Emma before finding her. Opening a telepathic connection with her via Caillou, War informed her about the girl and her mother, and who they were. Emma turned to Cyclops, explaining what she was going to do, before joining the mutant and mother. "I assume he's told you?" Emma asked the woman. Maria nodded and Emma looked at War, who shrugged and put his hands in his pockets. Emma sighed and rubbed her forehead. "We need to go talk somewhere less gridded." "My house is just 2 blocks that way," Maria said, pointing to the right, "the blast hardly nicked our street." "That'll do," Emma said, following the woman as she began talking to her about her identity and what she did in comparison to her aunt. War walked on Maria's left, his eyes glancing to either the mother or daughter while he conversed with his AI. "She's not a problem," Caillou stated, "I think she'll be able to control it in time." "But will she be able to turn it on or off?" Naruto asked Caillou, who remained silent. The blonde sighed, "Figures. If we can convince her mother to let us take her in and help her develop her abilities, I can determine that," Caillou said, "but unless that happens, I don't know about now." Bohr remained silent when Maria opened the door for them, setting Sally on the couch carefully before turning to the two as War shut the door quietly. She led them into the kitchen and asked, "Can I get you anything? Coffee?" "Coffee sounds wonderful right about now," Emma said as she sat down at the island in the center of the kitchen. War opted to lean against it and shook his head no. After pouring the headmistress for Xavier some coffee and getting some for herself, Maria looked at War and asked, "So why do you think Sally is a mutant?" "She siphoned off some of my aura," War said, making a small amount cover his hand, "and not the non-lethal kind. My suspicions are that she has the now rare energy draining ability." "Is that bad?" Maria asked in a concerned tone. War lowered his hand with his aura dispersing from it as he shook his head. "I can't say for sure," he said in an upset tone, "but I can tell you this, if S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, or anyone else gets word of her abilities, they will take her." "Why?" Maria asked loudly, her voice raising slightly. Emma shushed her, reminding her of her snoozing daughter, and waited for her to calm down. "Mutants with the ability to drain powers or energy have always been on the Omega level watch," the White Queen said, "if War is right, and I believe he is because I have 3 of my most trusted students checking with our computer, Cerebro. She, along with War and myself are appearing." Having known what Cerebro was, thanks to her aunt, Maria held her head in her hands. "Oh God, was a mutant, oh my God. Do you know his name?" Emma asked, already searching her mind for the answer. War saw the look of concentration on Emma's face and frowned before looking back at the woman only a few years older than himself. He could feel the sadness emitting from her and frowned even more. No one should ever have that much worry on their face. Especially not a mother. Maria spoke when the name came to her. "He told me it was Kim Kim Sung, I think." No sooner did the words leave her mouth did War groan as Caillou snarled, "I knew it. I fucking knew it. Let's hunt him down. Let's find that traitor. I told you to kill him all those days ago." "It's a cover," War instantly said, earning the attention of Emma Frost. "I'll explain later." "Have you gotten word from him lately?" "No, but oh my God, what if he comes after Sally? What will I do?" Maria asked as sobs started to come from her. Emma frowned and was about to offer the one thing she could when War spoke up again. Both of you could join us back at Xavier's, War offered. Both women looked at him with different faces. On Maria's was one of shock, curiosity, and gratitude, while Emma had a scowl, obviously showing her disapproval. War narrowed his eyes at the former White Queen, their eyes flickering red, and he cracked his knuckles subtly. He was challenging her to defy his offer, knowing she had only 2 defenses, both of which he could easily get past if necessary. And she knew that fact, too. Defeated, Emma looked back at Maria and forced a smile, backing War's offer. Maria smiled as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered while Emma felt something she hadn't felt since Charles had recruited her into the Xavier faculty. Something she hadn't felt since she first helped a family accept that someone was a mutant, Julian, and recruited a member of the Hellions for the first time. Fulfillment. "Damn man," Santos said lowly from his spot on the ground as he sat in front of the couch as he watched the video of the interview of the newly named War on the television. Julian nodded his agreement while he glanced at Josh, who was pacing as he looked at his cell phone. The poor guy was still obsessing over his girlfriend's injury from post-M day. "I don't know, I mean, he looked hot, sure, but maybe red isn't his color," Cassidy said into the phone as she sat in the lounge chair and chatted with her friend Ron Sinclair, aka Wolfsbane. Ron was a member of the X-Force Investigative Service and one of Cassidy's closest friends, seeing as she is a few years older than the Mercury girl. "What color would you give him then?" Ron asked. She was currently in the dwindling area of New York known as Mutant Town with the rest of the X-Force. She was watching the news while the rest of the team was out investigating. "Maybe a lighter red or orange," Cassidy said as she looked at the footage of War on the television. The Mercury girl blushed slightly when the girl in the blonde's arms nuzzled into his neck, finding the scene adorable. "Are you talking to Ron?" Nori asked her friend. Cassidy nodded, to which the blue-haired girl said, "Tell her I said hi." The red-heated girl rolled her eyes. "Nori says hi by the way." "Konnichiwa, Noriko-chan." Ron shouted through the phone, making Cassidy roll her eyes and pull the phone away from her ear. Noriko and Soraya, the Arabic mutant called Turab, dust in Arabic, giggled while the red-headed new X-Men member shook her head. She put the phone back against her ear, just in time to turn a glowing red when Ron asked, "So how old is this War exactly? He seems like my kind of guy." "Ron?" War sneezed for the 4th time, rubbing his finger under his nose while holding onto the legs that were draped over his shoulders. Maria had accepted his offer and, although Emma wasn't happy about it, thanked the headmistress and the newest X-Man repetitively. When it came time to wake Sally and tell her she would be moving, she initially freaked out when Maria or Emma approached her, a red force field shielding her from any type of communication as it formed a sphere around her. It turned out that only War could touch the shield without instantly being drained of energy, and to make things even more shocking to the 2 women, War was the only one keeping Sally calm. "God bless you." Sally chirped from her perch on War's shoulders while the other X-Men present helped Maria carry some boxes to the Blackbird. Wolverine smirked in War's direction, earning a scowl from the blonde as his eyes flickered red. Cyclops and Hank were both talking to the heroes Iron Man and Captain America about the Hero Registration Act as the 2 helped move the family while Emma shielded them all from view with her telepathy while sitting in the cockpit. "War?" Cyclops called, gaining the blonde teen's attention as he walked over, still carrying Sally on his shoulders. Beast tried hard not to crack a smile at the sight of the blonde carrying the green-eyed girl. "What you want, Shades?" War asked as he arched a brow, not knowing that Sally looked down at him and tried to duplicate his face. Beast couldn't take it anymore and rushed to aid Wolverine, laughing along the way. Cap and Iron Man snickered as the girl made several faces, trying to nail the blonde's own expression. Said blonde looked at them as though they were crazy and asked, "The fuck are you 2 girls laughing at?" "Then nothing," Iron Man said, clearing his throat, a smile evident in his voice, "just wondering how you would suggest we improve the RA. Got any ideas?" "You're asking me?" War asked, a smirk crossing his face, "'Cause honestly I say fuck it and let everything go back to how it was, but that's not an option anymore." "You're right, and while I agree with the fact that unmasking the superhero society would severely endanger thousands, it has to work somehow," Cap said, crossing his arms over his chest. Cap then pulled his mask down so it dangled over his back and held his hand out, "Steve Rogers, or Captain America, by the way." Naruto grabbed Steve's hand firmly, shocking the super soldier with his own improved strength. "Pleasure's mine, Cappy." Naruto Uzumaki, now known as War. "Happy?" Steve repeated in confusion as Wolverine doubled over in laughter when he overheard the nickname. Iron Man removed his helmet, revealing a man with sharply trimmed black hair and a neat artist's goatee, and offered his own hand. A smile was on his face and he chuckled at the nickname. "Tony Stark," he said as the blonde shook his hand as well, "Iron Man." "Bacha Tinny," Naruto said again, a scowl coming across the longtime Avenger's face while his friend smirked. Cyclops rubbed his forehead in embarrassment while Sally giggled in amusement. Anyway, Tony said once he got over the nickname Naruto had given him, like Steve said, the Ra is needed, but we don't want the heroes to become the new police of the world under the government's control. Then do it yourself, Naruto said as though it were that simple. I mean, you have the funds, skills, know-how, and the right pulls to make this happen, right? Do it yourself. Tony and Steve exchanged a look while Naruto walked away before they looked back at Cyclops. The leader of the X-Men smiled and crossed his arms over his chest before proclaiming in an even tone, "Don't get any ideas now, boys. He's an X-Man." "For now, Summers," Tony said as he pulled his helmet back on and Steve pulled his mask back on, "we have to go talk to someone about this whole Ra thing. I assume the X-Men are remaining neutral." "Yes," Scott said evenly, his eyes narrowing behind his visor. Tony said no more as he wrapped his arm over Steve's shoulder and the first Avenger held onto him with one hand as he shot into the sky. The headmaster of Xavier's shook his head slightly in an effort to calm down and went back to the Blackbird, smiling as Naruto pretended to be a horse for Sally. "I'd like to see you try and take him, Tony," Scott thought as he boarded the Blackbird. "We're living here. It's so big," Sally exclaimed from her spot in her mother's arms. Maria smiled as she was led through the mansion by Danielle Moonstar and Naruto, who carried the McTaggart bags with ease as they climbed the stairs. "You're telling me," Naruto muttered under his breath, Maria chuckling as they walked to the room Maria and Sally would be staying in. Consequently, Naruto was moved and right across from the two, a thought of Hanks to see if his hypothesis of Sally becoming attached to Naruto on a psychological level. The blonde collapsed on his bed after he helped move the McTaggart family into their room, a slightly larger room with enough room for the two of them, and just before he fell asleep, the bound of energy known as Sally came into his room. Last he had saw her, which was 30 minutes ago, she was going off to look around. War, she cried, making the blonde boy whimper quietly before growling and sitting up. "Yes, Sally?" he asked tiredly. He blinked and sighed when Sally showed him one of Rockslide's hands, making him think two things as he heard Santo cry out in anger. First, I leave her alone for 30 minutes and she's already causing trouble. And the second being, how in God's name did she get that? I found this in the silver room. I think it's a hand. What should we do? She asked him in worry, someone must be hurt. Sally, he muttered, rubbing his eyes, just put the hand down and it will go back to where it belongs, okay? Are you sure, War? I don't want it to get lost. She proclaimed with innocent eyes. Just before Naruto could snap at the child, Maria followed by a charred and missing a hand Santo came into the room. Sally. Maria cried in relief as she picked the girl up and crushed her in a hug, I was so worried. Don't ever wander off like that again. Or go into the damn danger room ow. Santo winced when Naruto chucked his own hand at his stomach, making the Rockman wince and rub his stomach. The blonde teen then walked over and flicked his fellow teen in the head, making Santo yowl in pain from the surprising force behind it. Baka, Naruto grunted as he ushered the McTaggarts out of his room, get out of my room and don't swear in front of children. Ozurk, Santo corrected himself at Naruto's warning glare. Nice save, the blonde smirked out before Sally escaped her mother's clutches and grabbed Naruto's hand, dragging him away with Maria following, a smile on her face. Weeks passed and Naruto slowly settled into his place as the new X-Men's newest combat teacher. Whenever they would enter the danger room with him, he went straight to war zone as Hellion jokingly called it. The blonde noticed that Mercury, or Cassie as she told him to call her, would glance at him every now and again, but shrugged it off. In the beginning, whenever it would come to a hand-to-hand no-powers training session, Hellion or Rockslide would volunteer. Apparently the two had made a bet with each other concerning who would be the one to knock him down. This is the situation Wolverine came across when he entered the dojo sim in the danger room. Ah! Hellion cried out in pain as War twisted his arm and pulled it behind his back. The former leader of the new X-Men was on his knees, while the newest teacher kept putting pressure on his shoulder. Wolverine remained quiet as he watched the blonde teach them in a way he highly approved of. How do you escape, Hellion? War asked as the teen yelped when he pulled on the arm in his grasp, use your head. Ignore the pain. Think. I too give. Uncle. Hellion cried out, making War scowl and release his arm sharply. The red-clad hero cradled his arm and made his way from the mat. War crossed his arms and looked at the team in front of him before his eyes locked on Mercury, an idea crossing his mind. Mercury, you're up. He said, making the group all look at the nervous Reed. Slowly, Mercury approached the mat War stood on, settling into a fighting stance she learned while training with Colossus and Emma Frost. War settled into his own stance, a beginning to what he called his Goken, and said, begin. Mercury hesitated before hardening her resolve and rushing the blonde. She feinted a left jab and followed through with a right cross punch, both were caught easily by War. She had anticipated this though and twisted her arms in an attempt to kick War in the left side of the head. War saw this and surprised her by releasing one of her arms, leaping up and over the girl that was in mid-kick with her arm still in his grip before he twisted it in a similar fashion to how he held Hellion in. Mercury gasped at the pain she felt in her shoulder, only to yelp when her arm was jammed between her shoulder blades. Her face heated up when she felt War's breath tickle the back of her neck. "You're now in a situation similar to Hellion," he informed her, not knowing that he was making her shudder at his proximity. "How do you escape?" Ow, gah." Mercury grit her teeth as he increased the pressure. He had his hand wrapped around her arm. As he increased the pressure, Mercury thought, "This would be so much easier if I could just morph my way out ofo, duh." Before anyone saw it coming, Mercury made her arm become a liquid form, letting it slip out of War's grasp, and she rolled away as it reformed into the original shape it was in. Following her roll, she quickly leapt into the air and twisted into a roundhouse kick, knocking War onto the mat on his back. After the blonde got over his slight daze, he kicked back up to his feet. She was pleased to see War smiling at her in approval before he turned to the other new X-Men, save for Prodigy, he was helping Sally with her schooling. "Can anyone tell me what Mercury had just done right on her first try that none of you could figure out in a week?" War asked the group. Elixir, who was shifting his attention from the teacher to the door anxiously, spoke as he realized what the lesson was. "She used her powers to escape," the golden boy said with realization in his voice. War smiled and nodded in approval. "Exactly," he said, making the others look at him with confusion. "The rules of this fight were no powers unless absolutely necessary. You all need to learn to look underneath the underneath. My teacher, a mutant that goes by the name of Scarecrow, taught me that." So, Nariko started as the lesson, the true lesson, came to her. "The point of the fight wasn't to beat you without our powers, but to know when to use our powers to win." "Summed it up to a T, Surge," War said, a nod and a pleased smile crossing his face. He looked over the new X-Men as a evil glint crossed his eyes, and because Cassidy was the only one to get the underneath, she is excused from having to write a 3-paged essay about how she could use her powers to escape the subduing holds you learned over the past week. "What?" The new X-Men, save for Cassidy, exclaimed in shock. Naruto grinned. "I want the essays on my desk by tomorrow at 1, Naruto said, snapping his fingers and looking at Wolverine. "They're all yours, old man." "Smug little prick," Wolverine said with a chuckle as he took over the training session while Naruto left to get a shower in. He laughed aloud when he heard the new X-Men all groan as Wolverine started the same simulation he had first done. Their mission was to beat his time. Something they had been trying ever since school had started again. "Very good, Sally," David said as he finished checking over the math the 7-year-old girl had done. "I'm very impressed." "Thanks, Prodigy," Sally said with a smile, revealing a tooth that had gone missing when she accidentally followed Naruto into his danger room session with Cyclops. She surprised them all, though, when she sucked all the energy from a sentinel that had her in its grasp, making it collapse with a loud ground-shaking thud. Her sudden smack in the face from a robotic tendril, however, was the reason she had lost a tooth. It wasn't bad in her opinion, seeing as she got $3 for the tooth. "David, Logan starting the danger room session," a voice said from their right. David and Sally looked up to see Naruto, now clad in a pair of lounge pants and a white tee with the Xavier insignia on the chest, leaning in the doorway. "You'd better get down there." "Thanks, Naruto," David said, smiling at the more experienced mutant before he turned to the bound of energy known as Sally McTaggart. "Work on your spelling words. When I'm done with my danger room session we're having a test." "Oh, okay," Sally said with a slight pout before smiling. David smiled and stood from the kitchen table and went towards the danger room to get some training in, while Naruto went and joined Sally at the table, stopping at the fridge to grab a yogurt cup for her and himself a small energy drink. "How's it going, Munchkin?" Naruto asked as he gave her the yogurt and a small spoon, learning hard. "Yup. Thanks, War," Sally said with a smile. Naruto smiled back slightly as he took a drink and started to help her with practicing her spelling words. About halfway through the third round of spelling her selected words, Sally looked at Naruto and asked, "Am I gonna get a cool name?" "What?" Naruto asked, thrown off track by the sudden change in her tone, from boredom to curiosity. The green-eyed girl looked up at him, her finished yogurt resting on her right. "Like you," she said with a smile, "I want a cool superhero name. Like Super Sally." Naruto chuckled and ruffled her hair, making the girl giggle, before he said, "Well, at the X-Mansion, I noticed people call themselves names similar to their powers. Like me, for example, an unstoppable force of God with the rage of the Hulk barely being contained. Or like Shades, he's gotta wear the weird one-eye visor, right? Well, that's why he's called Cyclops." "Oh," Sally said in understanding, "but when will I get one?" "You can have one whenever you want," the blonde informed her, unaware of the 3 sets of eyes watching him, one set belonging to 1/3 of a mind that watched him from the other side of the mansion, the second belonging to that of the girl's mother, who stood in the other doorway watching them with a smile. Though the first two meant no harm, the final pair had nothing but malice and hatred in the pearl color that seemed to have no pupils. The veins bulging around the eyes pulsing as blood flowed through them, and the eyes narrowed. "I've finally found you, MK36, were the thoughts of the owner of the strange eyes as they continued to read the lips and eavesdrop. "Can I have one now?" Sally asked with excitement. Naruto chuckled. "Of course," he said, before speaking sternly with a smile, "but not Super Sally." Oh, the girl groaned in disappointment. Naruto made to speak again when the voice in the back of his head, not his AI, but his danger sense, alerted him to something. He leapt from his chair at Sally, barely keeping her and himself from being hit by the sudden explosion that happened behind him. Naruto looked down at Sally as his persona, normally relaxed, turned serious as he said, "Sally, go to your mother." "But I said go, Sally." War instructed, Sally nodding as she scrambled out from under War's weight to the doorway. A scream then came from the girl, War looking over to see why she had screamed when he froze. There, lying battered and broken underneath various amounts of rubble, was Maria McTaggart. Dead. Right in front of her 7-year-old daughter. Who was frozen as she didn't know how to comprehend the situation. Before War could go to the girl's aid, the clacking of shoes against the floor got his attention, and he turned, only for his eyes to narrow. "Hello MK36, the stranger said in a male voice, his girlish features making him seem elegant and graceful, while his attire, a light beige flak jacket with dark pants and boots on his feet, screamed professional assassin. "Hi Uganiji," War snarled, baring his teeth, the assassin with the all-seeing eye named Omni. "The fuck are you doing here?" "I've been looking for you," Niji replied, his eyes still having the veins around them bulge, "you who have killed my father. You who have taken the honor of my family when you raped my to-be wife." "First off, Hinata raped me." War growled, and she admitted it in court. "Secondly, she didn't get pregnant, right? No harm, no foul on my part. It is the will of fate that I kill you today," Niji said as he pulled a mask from around his neck up, a strange image resembling the Nazi swastika, with a line going through it on the beige mask that had 2 holes to allow his eyes to be seen, while the Japanese kanji for fate was over the mouth, both symbols in black. "You know, before I knew you killed Maria, the first would have just broken your arms and called it a day," War said quietly, his eyes flashing red as his anger grew, "but now, I'm going to rip those fucking eyes from your fucking skull." He leapt at the other teen, surprising him as the red aura covered War and a roar escaped the X-man's mouth. Other faculty members and students arrived at the scene, David being the first to see Maria. "Oh god," he muttered, earning everyone's attention, before he went to Sally and grabbed her shoulders. He tried to move her, but the girl wouldn't budge. "Sally, come on, we have to go," David said quietly. Sally remained quiet as tears ran down her cheeks. Amar relieved David from trying to help the girl, picking her up with ease and carrying her down to the infirmary while the other X-men went to help War. "Ah, you son of a bitch." War roared, swinging a claw in Omni's direction. Blue aura covered Omni's hands and he deflected the attack. "You first," Omni replied in an even tone as he rushed forward and jammed 2 fingers into War's chest, just to the left of his heart. "Ah." War gasped out as he felt difficulty in breathing. His AI was snarling, pissed that he didn't have any information on the foe, save for the fact his eyes were all-seeing. "I don't know how he did that, but make him pay for it." Caillou snarled, displeased with the way the fight was going. War's eyes narrowed as he forced air in and out of his lungs, improving his breathing quickly. Omni's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "You're stronger than before," Omni observed, "Father's strikes almost killed you." War snarled before he spat blood to the side and cracked his neck. He flexed his hands, thus flexing the claw-like aura shroud, before he rushed at him again, and I took up a certain style in case this fight would ever happen. He jumped, spinning in the air with his right leg swinging out. Omni's eyes widened and he started twisting in his place, a shield forming around himself. "Die." The bloodthirsty War shouted as his foot connected with the blue spinning shield. A large explosion followed, the X-men rushing even faster to the scene. Omni pushed himself out of the hole he was shot into, sighing in irritation when the X-men stopped across from him. "Who are you and why did you attack our school?" Cyclops shouted in anger, his hand resting on the release trigger of his visor, itching to press it. "I am not here for your school," Omni replied, "I was dealing with a past issue." "What issue would that be, bub?" Wolverine asked with a snarl, his claws out and ready to slice the new foe to itty-bitty pieces. Omni's eyes narrowed at the yellow and blue-clad hero. "You act much like MK36, Omni said in disgust, "I should rid the world of you so no more failures like him exist." "I'm not a failure." A voice roared from beneath him. Omni looked down just in time to be nailed in the jaw as War burst from the ground, his Xavier t-shirt torn and filthy and his aura glowing brightly around him. Omni felt his jaw break from the attack and he flew back many feet before landing in a heap on the ground. War snarled before launching the extended claw at the assassin, wrapping around him before throwing him into the air. War bared his fangs as his hands stayed about 3 inches apart, a mass of black energy growing between them. Slowly, as the mass sped up and formed a sphere, War closed his hands together until they were clasped around the energy. He then took a deep breath before opening his mouth in a roar, the black energy spewing up at the descending Omni. Omni's eyes widened as he realized this was where he would die. The energy enshrouded him, burning him intensely and making him yell in pain. When the burning stopped, Hyuga Niji plummeted to the ground, landing in a broken heap. He looked up to see War standing over him, anger gleaming in his red eyes. "Just so you know," he said, "your father died in a tournament against Cloud. You killed an innocent human mother, ruined the life of an innocent mutant little girl, and now she will have the same hatred you have. I hope you're glad fate led you to this." Tears were streaming down Niji's face as he accepted the truth. He deluded himself into thinking MK36 was to blame for his father's death, as he fought his father just before the tournament started, the outcome being MK36 the winner. That was over 7 years ago. He started the cycle again. He ruined a life and ended an innocent one. Or turned and walked away, not before pausing one final time and turning to face the broken assassin. He picked a rock from the ground and chucked it directly at Omni's head, either killing him or knocking him out. War didn't care anymore. He had to get to Sally. War? Emma exclaimed in shock at his action, only to be silenced when the glowing red eyes of the blonde locked on her and narrowed. "The fuck do you want?" he snarled, making the headmistress back down. War snorted before walking back to the X-mansion, ignoring everyone that stepped out of his way. He did notice that Hank, Cassidy, and Logan all followed the blonde when he went to the infirmary. Amara gave him a glance and quietly left the room, ushering Logan and Cassidy out as well, while Hank stayed with War. "She's in shock, Naruto," Hank said as he looked at the devices hooked up to her, "she'll be fine." "Yeah," the blonde replied in a dead tone. The blue lion-ish mutant looked at his godson, frowning as the teen stared down sadly at the girl lying on the bed. Naruto looked so exhausted that it gave off the image that he was almost 3 times his age. Hank frowned, wondering why his godson would look like that when he heard Naruto ask him something, but missed the question. "What was that, Naruto?" Hank asked. Naruto spoke quietly and neutrally, something that did nothing to soothe the worry in the scientist's mind. "Please leave, McCoy." Despite his better instincts screaming for him not to leave, Hank did as he was asked and even shut the door behind him. No sooner had the door clicked shut did Naruto put his head in his hands and fall to his knees on Sally's right. "Oh God, what have I done?" he asked no one. His AI, although an advanced computer, remained silent as the blonde sobbed. Caillou knew that Naruto would get past this feeling of guilt and come out stronger, but it would rather that the blonde didn't have to go through this moment again. "It's always like this," the blonde said softly, reciting a story he heard from Dr. Sarutobi. "I bring nothing but conflict and sorrow, no matter where I go or." An ideal name. One of the 4. The beginning of the end. Pestilence, the one bringing vengeance through pain of illness. Famine, starving the remaining guilty until they relent and beg forgiveness. Death, the mercy given through the end of their life. Famine, a quiet voice said, making Naruto look over at Sally in alarm that she was regaining some consciousness. "What was that, Sally?" Naruto asked quietly. The green eyes blurred by tears in her eyes locked on Naruto's blue and red ones. "I wanna be Famine," Sally said with a sniffle, "make them sorry." Naruto smiled softly and brushed some of her brown hair away from her face and kept his hand on her cheek. "Famine it is." When the X-Men entered the room to check on their newest member and the girl, they came across the sight of Naruto asleep on the bed with Sally nuzzled into his side, also asleep. The blonde's arm around her protectively, leaving an unsaid, unwritten promise left by the blonde. "No one will ever hurt Sally again." 4. Aftermath. And Alz-Ov hardly knew her, Maria McTaggart will forever be in our hearts, the priest Kurt Wagner, also known as the new Excalibur leader Nightcrawler, said in a slightly saddened tone as he stood behind the tombstone in the gravesite on the X-Mansion's grounds and gave the eulogy. Naruto had Sally standing in front of him, his hands on her shoulders, as they stood on the left of Mora McTaggart, the only other family member remaining in Sally's family. Naruto wore black dress khaki pants, his combat boots, and a black long-sleeved shirt, deciding against formal attire while still feeling comfortable. Sally was wearing a black spring dress with black sandals on, the sunlight gleaming down on her, a mockery of her feelings. Mora was dressed in a similar manner, wearing heels instead of sandals. Hank and David were the only other 2 present. Hank there as the shoulder for Mora and Naruto, while David was there to assist Naruto with Sally. The funeral was a small gathering, the rest of the X-Men and students leaving the fort to grieve on their own. "Thank you, Kurt," Hank said with a nod to his fellow blue-furred mutant once he had finished. The teleporter gave them a sad smile and went to Sally's side, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I'm very sure your mother was a very good person," Kurt said to her with a smile, "do not be saddened, child. You will see her again." Sally nodded as she rubbed her eyes furiously before turning and burying her face into Naruto's side. Naruto gave the priest a nod of thanks, earning a nod in return as he led Sally to the gravestone. David stayed behind to give his condolences to Mora, as well as ask her about her past with the professor he had heard so much about. Hank led Kurt back into the mansion to give him a welcome back and a thank you from the headmaster and headmistress, who felt it would be wrong for them to attend. Emma did anyway. She thought she didn't deserve to be present due to the fact she never fully supported the idea of Maria being on the grounds in the first place. Or? Sally asked quietly. Naruto looked down at the brown-haired girl as she continued to speak in a quiet voice. Did you get the bad guy that did this? Naruto remained quiet as he recalled what had happened to Neji earlier that morning. Why are you telling me this? Naruto asked with a glare locked on the assassin with bandages around his head. They were in the infirmary, where Sally still laid resting, and the assassin had just informed Naruto of information he didn't like. Leaf had been destroyed. Neji sighed sadly and looked away. Because of my rash actions, I ruined a life, he said softly from his spot on his knees in front of the blonde, and while I would more than welcome the easy way out, I have a wife back home, and I should not harm her with my own guilt. Please, just promise me, MK36. Promise me you'll stop this man. He'll destroy the fragile peace that the ENL have with each other. Do this for your kin that fell in the Battle of Leaf. Naruto remained silent before turning away and crossing his arms. In a cold tone, the blonde mutant said, get the fuck out of here before I change my mind and kill you, Omni. When the sound of leaves fluttering in the area hit his ears, Naruto bowed his head and clenched his fists. He should have just killed him when they first fought like his instincts told him to. Damned honor. Shaking his head, Naruto looked down at the curious Sally and said coolly, he won't bother anyone ever again. I promise. Sally nodded and looked back at the gravestone before her eyes looked back up at the blue-eyed blonde she saw as a father figure and asked, when am I gonna start training with Prodigy and you? Naruto allowed a small smile to come across his face as he looked at the green-eyed girl, when do you want to start? Now. The young child said with determination and anger shining in her eyes. Naruto chuckled softly and picked the girl up, leading her towards the semi-psychic mutant and her great aunt. We'll start tomorrow, Naruto said to her as she yawned and rested her head on his shoulder. For now, I think you should hang out with Mora. Okie dokie, Sally sighed out as her eyes drooped. The emotions that she had been feeling for the past few days had been severely making her tired. The only way she continued to be so energetic was through draining some of Naruto's aura every day. Thank you for keeping an eye on my grandniece, Mr. Uzumaki, Mora thanked him genuinely with a smile as she took the half-asleep girl from the blonde. Naruto smiled back slightly. Please call me Naruto, and it's no problem, ma'am, the blonde mutant said. I'm only sorry that it was a past issue of mine that caused this. Don't dwell on it, Mora said with a smile, her hand resting on his arm. You couldn't have known a mutant from your past had been hunting you down, now could you? No, I guess not, Naruto sighed out, his head dipping slightly before he looked back up, his eyes burning red and determination glowing in them. But I can do what I can to keep this place as ENL free as I can. Did you say ENL? Mora repeated in shock, her voice rising. She quickly handed the snoozing Sally to David, asking, could you please go lay her on my bed and watch her for me, David? Of course, Dr. McTaggart, the African-American teen replied with a nod, already expecting her to ask that. He quickly turned and took the girl inside, leaving the two alone. Mora McTaggart grabbed Naruto's left arm and slid the sleeve of the shirt down, revealing a small circle Naruto believed to be a mole when in actuality it was inserted chip Mora had implanted on Leaf Experiment MK36. My god, you are MK36. She said in amazement, I thought you died when Leaf was attacked by sand and sound. Wait a minute. Naruto snapped as he pulled his arm back and a look of sorrow came across his face. Omni was telling the truth. Leaf is gone. I don't know everything because S.H.I.E.L.D. had me on another assignment, the geneticist said with a shake of her head as her voice dropped lowly, but I do know that the Leaf was destroyed in a large fire by a pyrokinetic pair of brothers. The reports from the survivors in the S.H.I.E.L.D. infirmary said they had black hair and blood-red eyes with commas in their eyes. Naruto's eyes widened, no. McTaggart blinked in confusion as the blonde teen growled. The red aura flickered on and off around him as he stormed off to who knows where. Mora decided to let it go and walked off to find David and her grandniece. You're positive about this information? Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent Maria Hill asked a shaded man on the other side of a computer screen. The only thing visible was his odd purple eyes, but to Hill, it was just another soldier reporting to her. I'd put my life on the line, the man said before the screen went dark. Hill shook her head and rubbed her temples as she forced the headache she recently randomly gained. She looked down at her computer screen and her eyes widened as she read over the information that just opened. She grit her teeth and assembled a strike team. She then led them all to the helipad and loaded them up before taking the pilot seat. The coordinates she entered in the onboard computer turned into a virtual image of one of the most iconic buildings to date. The Xavier Mansion. Again. Naruto barked as he supervised a spar between Hellion and Rockslide. The two had their teamwork down to a T, but Naruto brought up the situation of a mind controller taking control of one of them would ruin their teamwork and turn it against them. They had to learn to fight on their own. "God, why?" Hellion groaned as he got back to his feet. Rockslide spat to the side and reattached his hand, rubbing his sore knuckles afterwards. His head was hard. "Because I fucking said so. Now do it again." Naruto barked. The other members of the new X-Men watched with slight pity on their faces as the two former Hellions tiredly fell into a fighting stance. The blonde Wolverine wannabe, in some of the new X-Men's minds he was worse than the Canadian, snapped his head in their direction, his eyes a burning red. "Who said you were done?" he asked with a snarl. "Pair off and spar. When Karma arrives." "Correction," Karma said as she walked into the danger room, "I'm here. You're dismissed, Mr. Uzumaki." Naruto locked his eyes on her before he walked out of the danger room, the aura of anger radiating off of him and his fists clenched at his sides. Mercury followed him with saddened eyes, not understanding what had happened to the semi-caring X-Man she had grown to care for. The Silver Girl sighed before falling in the group alongside their current teacher. She did release a small groan when Karma announced they would be going through another team simulation. If there was one thing she agreed with Naruto and Logan on, the X-Men relied too much on teamwork and not enough on separate self-control. "Thank God," Hellion muttered as the simulation started, "I thought I was going to die." "You might if you don't pay attention," Surge shouted, pushing Hellion to the ground, his head nearly being lopped off by stray helicopter blade destroyed by a sentinel. Mercury cleared her head of the blonde X-Man and focused on the task at hand. "Now focus on stopping me from hurting you, Famine," Beast instructed as he and the youngest mutant stood in a secluded area outside. Mora stood off to the side with an evaluation pad in her arms, writing down what she observes. So far they had deduced that it is a basis of willpower for Famine to drain someone, create a barrier around herself or around others. "Okay, Mr. McCoy," Famine said with the innocence of a child. Beast rolled his shoulders before he charged at her with a small roar, attempting to distract her. The young green-eyed girl held her hands out, palms facing the lion-like mutant, and kept her focus as the aqua-green energy sphere flickered around her until sustaining its form. As before, Beast slammed into the barrier's side and was reflected back about twice his starting distance. "Sorry," Famine cried as she ran towards the blue-furred mutant, her shield dropping. Beast groaned and slowly pulled himself from the trunk of a tree before landing on the ground with a grunt. Mora and Famine appeared at his side, the doctor checking her colleague's head while the child apologized again and again. Beast waved her off and looked up to see Naruto and David approaching both of them, a smile on one face, while the other had a small amused smirk. Hank stood and dusted his legs off, assuring Sally he was okay before looking towards the two approaching mutants and assigned teachers to Sally McTaggart aka Famine. Hank raised his hand to wave at them when something hit him in the back of the thigh, causing him to roar in pain. Sally screamed and Mora gasped, the two approaching mutants sped up before eventually they were running. Hank looked over his leg to see if it was bad when he noticed a feather sticking out of his leg. His eyes widened and he looked back at Mora. "Take Sally and run," he yelled to her as he felt the drug kick in, now. Mora didn't have to be told twice, grabbing the girl that was looking horrified at the downed form of her friend and carrying her back towards the mansion. 3 men dressed in all black came out of the brush and fired rounds at her. "No," Naruto shouted as his eyes turned completely red and he threw his hand out, a large red claw, becoming a sort of shield for the two fleeing McTaggarts. Prodigy had already reached out to the headmistress telepathically and informed her of what was going on. War snarled, itching to go and rip the heads of the attackers off of their bodies and use said bodies to beat the others to death, only holding back because the McTaggarts needed to get to safety before he could go all out. "Take him," the lead attacker said, the one on the left nodding and firing rounds at War. War, however, didn't take too kindly to this and tossed his small amount of patience to the wind before roaring and charging the wannabe warriors. "Die." War roared as he switched from running bipedal to his hands and feet, his aura looking like a beast running on all fours with a tail flowing behind him. From the side of the forest an electric wiring shot out and wrapped around him, electrocuting him to no end with over 50,000 volts. Caillou would have given him advice in the situation, but the AI was too busy working on keeping the teen alive. "Ogged." The red aura-covered mutant gurgled out from his predicament. The advancing squad of 3 moved past him and into the mansion, only for their lead to be punched square in the face by the sudden appearance of a steel fist via BAM from Nightcrawler and Colossus. The other two exchanged a look before taking aim at the teleporting priest, one being taken out by a red beam of light in the side, while the other was tackled to the ground by the rabid man known as Wolverine. "Shit. Go, go, go." Another team leader shouted as 15 more men charged from either side of the forest where the electric wires that held Naruto down came from. Wolverine snarled and unsheathed his claws, running to meet the enemy, while Colossus and Cyclops formed a defensive stance, and Nightcrawler bamfed away, reappearing behind two of the men and taking one of his hidden knives out, using it to its semi-fullest extent and disabling them. Colossus followed Wolverine's lead and charged into battle with a Russian battle cry. Cyclops continued to cover the door, while Emma activated the mansion's defensives. "Bugsy, I'm getting pissed." Naruto roared, his aura snapping the electrical binds that bound him to the ground. Another tail bubbled to life and his canines grew, his eyes became slitted and the marks on his face darkened. He got to his feet, rolling his neck and shoulders before turning around and rushing towards the mansion. He skid to a stop right in front of Cyclops and sucked in some air through his nose. "Away!" War roared out, the last word turning into a powerful gust of wind that started sending some of the advancing attackers back into the forest before the nearby trees were uprooted. Colossus grabbed Nightcrawler, his weight keeping both of them down, while Wolverine sheathed his claws and knelt to the ground before he unsheathed them into the dirt as a safety measure. Sure enough, about 2 minutes later, the attackers were no longer in the clearings and War stopped yelling, his aura dropping down to one tail and exhaustion written on his face as everything reverted back to normal. "X-Men, War. You are ordered by SHIELD personnel to stand down." Hill's voice echoed throughout the area, "This is Agent Maria Hill, SHIELD director. Stand down now." War looked up to see an Apache helicopter and a Blackhawk slowly dropping down. A sniper popped out of the side of the Blackhawk with a .50 cal locked on him, while a man-operated minigun also locked onto his person from the other side. The X-Men all lowered their weapons, save for War, who kept his aura active. Before Cyclops could order him to dismiss the aura, War slowly dropped it. "That's better," Hill said, landing the helicopter and turning it off. Several SHIELD agents hopped out of the side and ran into the forest after the would-be attackers. The minigun operator detached his mounted weapon and ran after them as did the sniper. Once the props were fully powered down, Hill stepped out of the helicopter and approached the X-Men. Naruto kept his eyes locked on the woman, something being off about her. "What do you want, princess?" Logan asked, pulling his cowl back and snarling at her in a distrusting manner. Hill glanced at him but returned her attention to Naruto, who stood in his normal X-Men attire before her with clenched fists. "I'm here to talk to you, War," Hill said in a polite yet ordering tone, as in it sounded like she said, "I'm here to talk to him, and I won't leave until I do." "Yeah, well, talk to me," Scott said, stepping forward and crossing his arms. "Who were those men? What were they doing here? And where's Hank?" 3 questions, 3 answers, no more, no less, Hill said in her polite soldier tone, to which Scott clenched his jaw before nodding. At his nod, Hill answered him, "Those men were part of a rogue organization known as Sound." Naruto snarled, his eyes flashing red and his fists clenching tightly. While the X-Men looked at their newest member in concern, Hill continued, "We assume they were here for both war and famine, and to answer your last question, Kurt Wagner, aka Nightcrawler, ported to Beast's side, and I assume he took him to the medical center. Now, War, if you'll follow me." "He ain't going anywhere, Hill," Logan snarled before pointing at himself with his thumb, "he's with us." "This is a matter of national security, Wolverine," Hill replied with narrowed eyes. The two glared each other down when Naruto's voice interrupted them. "Sally and Dr. McTaggart comes with me," Naruto said, earning everyone's attention. "They're the only risks on the grounds as it is. They come with me and get SHIELD's full protection." "Of course," Hill said with a nod, "you have 10 minutes to gather what you need." "I'm no rookie," Naruto snapped before he turned and walked into the mansion, catching Sally as she leapt at him and sobbed into his shoulder in concern for Hank. Naruto simply held her and turned to Dr. McTaggart, explaining the situation to her and convincing her to help him pack some things for Sally. He was unaware of the now worried teen that fled back towards her room, the shock of his conversation with the doctor, killing any courage she had to ask him out. A few minutes later, Naruto stood with Sally in his arms across from Scott, Peter, and David, saying his farewell for now. Dr. McTaggart was already on the helicopter, prepping a link to the X-Mansion to keep the X-Men in the loop. Apparently, ever since his talk with Tinny, Iron Man, and Cappy, Captain America, over the Superhero Registration Act that had been drawn up again to satisfy both sides, SHIELD's support of the heroes increased tremendously. Before, when Hill would be asked for permission to keep them in the loop, Hill would deny the request within a heartbeat. Now, however, it was different. Naruto sat Sally on his left so she was between Mora and himself, and he turned his attention to Agent Hill with narrowed eyes. He spoke in a cold and serious voice, "I want to know everything you now know." Hill smirked, already liking the blonde before she replied, "After the attack on the Leaf organization, Sound betrayed Sand and kidnapped Sand's strongest mutant, designated Sandman." Naruto snorted and sat back in his seat, amusing. "Naming your mutant after a deceased villain. continue. After that, we got word from our spear group that more and more facilities funded by the UN, such as Snow, Wave, and Water were under attack. The strongest mutants from each facility were taken hostage, and few survivors remained, Hill said, already confirming Omni's words to him. We think that sound is going to target either Cloud or Stone next. And you want my advice? Naruto asked suspiciously. Hill looked at him for a moment before smirking. Well, aside from the fact you have a really pretty face, Hill said, making the pilot choke on his drink and Naruto to smirk, you're the only one with the power to hold back a massive invasion on par with the Skrull attacks in the 90s. Oh, those were horrible, Dr. McTaggart recalled randomly before shaking her head and resuming some experiment she was working on. Sally was asleep between the two and her head was resting on Mora's left. Exactly why we came to war, Hill said before looking at the blonde expectantly, so what do you say? When do we begin? Naruto asked with a smirk. 5. Attack on the helicarrier. Wow. Sally exclaimed with wide eyes as she pressed her face against the window of the helicopter she rode in. She now sat where Agent Hill previously occupied and looked at the resting mutant that had been caring for her since her mother died. Look, War, look. It's so big. Seen bigger, Naruto commented quietly, while smiling slightly at the amazement the girl at the window showed, but yeah, I guess the helicarrier is pretty impressive up close. Only pretty impressive, War? Agent Hill asked with a small smirk from her spot in the co-pilot seat. What? Is it not good enough to look at? Probably be better if we could see it in action, the blonde mutant replied, sitting back in his seat and closing his eyes. The helicopter they rode in was easily dwarfed by the massive average town-sized base of Strategic Hazard Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division, SHIELD. The helicarrier had its defensive systems up and locked on the incoming vehicles, the many people within it, wondering if their commander brought back the assistance needed to stop the new threat to the planet. Hill began sending some complex codes to the helicarrier's command center. Naruto didn't bother to listen to them, though. SHIELD's personnel kept the codes changing every 2 minutes like clockwork for a week before the code's order randomly changed for the next week. We've got the all clear, Naruto heard the pilot say as they redirected to land in the hidden air hangar. Well, Mr. Uzumaki, let me be the first to welcome you to the helicarrier. Thanks, Naruto replied, recognizing the voice and a portion of the pilot's face. Wyatt Wingfoot, Wyatt provided. Caillou instantly released information it knew about the pilot. Wingfoot is a Kawazi descendant and longtime friend of the Fantastic Four's Johnny Storm. Guy's got a hell of a resume, kid. He's fought Hulk, Inhumans, demons, you name it, and he's probably fought it. On a personal note, he's apparently been one of the few in the She-Hulk's pants, a list I hope we join soon, the AI suggested, only for it to receive a mental boot to the head from the blonde host. Naruto shook his head, cursing his grandfather's influence on the perverted Biju, before speaking, thanks Wyatt. No problem, the pilot replied as he shut the helicopter down. When that was finished, a large man with a bowler hat and a red mustache opened the side door of the Apache helicopter. Dr. McTaggart stepped out of the helicopter first, taking the hand of the man that had opened the door, before turning and lifting Sally out of it. Naruto hopped out afterwards, picking Sally up and holding her on his hip. Wyatt and Hill both stepped out of the cockpit, the former leaving with a man in the bowler hat and a mustache, while the latter led the 3 newcomers to the command center. We will start planning ways to stop sound from here, Agent Hill said, opening the doors to the command center. Sally looked around in awe at all of the gleaming television screens and computer screens that were being looked at by a strange red-skinned man wearing a green and yellow outfit, complete with a yellow cape. She climbed down from Naruto's side and went over to him, pulling on his cape. The red-faced man looked down at her with a neutral glance. Hi. She greeted. Hello there, little mutant, the man greeted with a nod. I am the Vision MK2, what are you doing in here? Sally, leave Vision alone, Naruto sighed out as he walked up to them and picked the green-eyed girl up before looking back at Vision and offering his hand. Naruto Uzumaki, you can call me. Or, Vision nodded, I know. I know. Everything the SHIELD computer knows, I know, Naruto shot back with a small smirk, his smirk widening at the slightly unnerved look on the android's face. My AI is based off your design. Interesting, Vision mused as he took his hand back, I would like to meet this AI of yours. Do you have a security code? Just ask and he'll probably let you in, the blonde replied with a small smile, he and I see it as a pleasure meeting a former Avenger. The pleasure meeting a new media icon, Vision sent back with a small upturning of his mouth. He phased through the ground just as Naruto felt a small tingle in the technical portion of his mind. Naruto broke off the connection with his AI momentarily to give the 2 technologically advanced sentient beings privacy. He went back to the desk where Agent Hill sat down and placed the younger mutant in a seat between himself and her great-aunt before sitting on the girl's left. So, what's the first thing on our agenda? Naruto asked Maria. The SHIELD commander smiled and activated her computer. An image of a red-haired teen with red wings came on screen and Naruto blinked. Icarus? He muttered, recalling a video when he met one of the famed Guthrie mutants. What do you want with Icarus? Not what I want, Hill said, what Sound wants. Recently we've obtained information that confirms Sound has him in custody. We need to extract him before he is transferred to the main Sound base. He's pretty. Sally chimed in, we gonna save him war? Naruto didn't reply, but he kept his arms crossed and narrowed his eyes at the SHIELD agent. How did you obtain this information? That would be me, a shady figure said from the far corner. Naruto snapped his attention over to the right and came across a teen probably about his age. A familiar teen wearing a dark coat that hid his hair color, a high-collared shirt that hid his face, and sunglasses that hid his eyes. The blur of red was all anyone said before the SHIELD commander, and Dr. McTaggart saw the blonde holding up the teen against the wall. Naruto's red aura was lightly covering his form and he was snarling at the teen. The good doctor frowned, not anticipating this beforehand. Please release me, MK-36, the teen said in a calm and stoic voice. Fuck you. War shouted, slamming the teen in the wall and cracking it, you fucking son of a bitch. War. Stand down. Maria shouted, standing and aiming her pistol at him, release him. Boar continued to growl at the boy in his grip, increasingly becoming pissed off at the way he was calmly being stared down. He didn't like this guy not one bit. Not now, and certainly not then. Boar Famine whimpered, her green shield faintly becoming visible as she approached the irritated mutant. Please. Let him go, Mr. Uzumaki, Dr. McTaggart calmly ordered, his reason for being here is important and relevant to your own reason for being here. Famine placed her hand on War's leg, slowly draining the energy from his shroud and calming him down. War kept his burning red eyes on the stoic mutant in his hands before lowering him to the floor and pulled his hands back. He turned to Famine and picked her up, both of their eyes returning to the original color they once were. Naruto kept a slight glare locked on the teen, not knowing if he received one or not. Thank you, doctor, the teen said as he fixed the crinkles in his jacket, revealing light pink skin underneath the long sleeves as his hand adjusted his clothes. The teen walked over to the side of Maria's desk and input a few codes, alerting the guards outside the room everything was fine. The teen turned his head towards Naruto and Sally, the latter burying her face in the former's shoulder, while the former growled and turned the girl away from him. The teen hummed, a symbiotic bond intriguing. I assumed only symbiote suits or selective telepaths, such as my family, can create such a bond. You keep your damn bugs off of me, Naruto snarled as he smacked the back of his neck, making the teen flinch, before rolling his fingers over his palm and flicking the crushed body of an insect at the teen, fucking freak. Says the boy that killed 700 men before turning 10, the teen snapped back in his cool, uncaring tone. Before the blonde could leap at the dark teen, Maria stood and slammed her hands on her desk. Sit down, Mr. Aburam, she said in a no-nonsense tone, and Mr. Uzumaki. I can get restraints built for Dr. Banner in here. Like they would work, Naruto grumbled as he adjusted Sally in his arms before sitting back down. After taking a deep breath, the blonde nudged Sally and whispered, you okay, kiddo? Who's the scary man? The small girl asked, lifting her head up to look at the strange teen sitting calmly in a chair that was brought to him by a black buzzing cloud. The blonde looked coldly at the teen before replying. Shino Aburam, Naruto growled out quietly, while Shino calmly kept his hidden gaze on the blonde. He's an entopathan insect telepath. Not to mention he's what I call the living ant farm. He's also a genius rivaling the intellect of a certain Reed Richards. I'm surprised you even remembered the word entopath, MK-36, the cool voice of the Aburam said, making Naruto's blood boil at the insult. Before the blonde could snap again, Shino held his pale hand up, forgive me, MK-36. I promised Omni some insults when he informed me of his defeat at your hands. He sends apologies. Naruto relaxed slightly, but made no motion to return a comment, so Shino continued, anyway, I was sent here by my employer to assist with the sound problem. I made a detour to the sound base and slipped my prototype fly spy within. Imagine my surprise when I came across this. Shino pressed a button on the console and a video file popped up. It showed a silver-haired teen with glasses and a man with long black hair and white skin standing over the youngest Guthrie mutant. The teen then adjusted his glasses as he continued, I have, believe it or not, been following the X-Men's Twitter account. Can you say that again please? Naruto asked with a shocked face, I thought Aburam didn't believe in inferior technology. Funny, MK-36, the entopath muttered as the sound of buzzing grew slightly. Naruto smirked in victory as the Aburam continued, as I was saying, I had heard of young Icarus's vanishing, and this piqued my interest. As you can see, our friend Hebe-san has decided to infuse Icarus with adamantium, but his reasons for doing so are unknown. I uploaded this file to a comrade who then gave the information to SHIELD. Now I'm here, you've been briefed. Shall we get on with discussing the rescue plan? Who put you in charge, pest? the blonde asked with a growl. The buzzing coming from the entapath grew and Naruto growled lowly in his throat while his eyes flashed red. A sudden clearing of the throat earned both teens' attention and they looked at Maria. "This is serious, Uzumaki," the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. said with a grave tone, "if Sound is doing what I think they are, then we're in big trouble. Your mission is to rescue Icarus before that happen." Alarms blaring suddenly cut her off and a large rumble shook the helicarrier. Naruto pulled Sally into a protective hug and jumped back when a section of the ceiling fell in his previous state. A black swarm of insects rescued Dr. McTaggart from being crushed by said piece of ceiling and Shino leapt at Maria, pulling her to the ground. "What the hell was that?" Naruto roared, his eyes a bright red and his aura flickering around him as Sally whimpered in his arms, her green shield flickering along with his aura. "Thanks Aburam," Maria said with a nod as she got to her feet and went to her desk, "give me a minute, Uzumaki, and I'll find out." "Thank you, Shino," Dr. McTaggart said with a smile to the cloaked teen. Shino nodded his reply as the black swarm of insects returned to his body. Sally buried her face into Naruto's chest again and formed a shield around them. "Make it stop, make it stop, make it stop," she repeated over and over as she went into shock. Acting quickly, War lightly gripped a pressure point that put her in a relaxed state. A light red hand began rubbing the green-eyed girl's back, putting her to sleep. "Sleep, my famine," he whispered as her eyes shut and she began the journey to dreams. As soon as he was sure she was out, War looked at a very concerned Dr. McTaggart and asked, "PTSD?" "Looks like it," the woman replied sadly as she took the girl from the mutant's arms, "so young she shouldn't have had to deal with this. If I ever find out who staged that show, I'll kill them," War grumbled before looking at Maria as another rumble shook the carrier. "What the fuck is going on, Hill? We're under attack." Agent Hill shouted before slamming her hand on a red button, "This is Special Agent Maria Hill of S.H.I.E.L.D. to any nearby Avengers. We're under attack. We have children on board. Request assistance immediate." Cuckoo, a voice cut her off through the holoscreen in the middle of the room. Maria, War and Shino all glanced at it while Dr. McTaggart backed up into a shadowy corner, hiding herself and the unconscious famine from view. War released a beast-like growl of fury and Shino's body buzzed in agitation. "Orochimaru," Shino said, with an underlining hint of malice, "the Orochi no Yamada of Leaf." "I'm sorry dear boy," Orochimaru said through his end, "but I am Hebe Sennin of the Sound. I don't know of this Orochi no Yamada of Leaf, perhaps he perished in the fire." "What do you want, you sick fuck?" War asked with a snarl as he clenched his fists. Orochimaru blinked a few times before smiling sadistically and chuckling. My, Naruto-chan," he purred, "look at how much you've grown. I'll bet your parents must be so proud of you and dear old Sarutobi-sensei, how much he must have adored you." "Speak no ill of the dead, Orochimaru," Shino warned, making War glance at him with wide eyes, "or you shall fall prisoner to their wrath." "Ha! I'd love to see sensei try and come after the next immortal." The white-skinned man laughed out, but alas, he along with his precious Leaf are long gone just as S.H.I.E.L.D. shall be. "It was a pleasure to see how you've grown, MK36A shame I'll lose a perfect enforcer to make the world bow to my rule." Cupid, I guess that's why there's 9 of you." War stared wide-eyed at the screen as it went dark before he turned to Shino and asked, "As Sarutobi's?" "By Orochimaru's hand, yes," Shino answered before turning and walking to the hiding McTaggarts, grabbing Maria's arm and pulling her with him. He pushed them against the wall and stood in front of them. Before they could question what he was doing, Shino willed his insects to create a barrier over them. A black swarm emerged from his body, doing as he commanded. It was quiet, aside from the occasional distant explosion, for a moment before a loud and pain-filled roar echoed throughout the helicarrier. Shino dipped his head in silence. "I'm sorry for your loss, Naruto," he whispered quietly. Sarutobi was the closest thing to a father the blonde had, as his real father was always away, working to fight for mutant rights, while also running the Leaf operations. The emergence of closer explosions alerted them that War had drifted off into what a young Hellion named Hellion called War's Own. "Orochimaru." War roared as he ripped through another sound clone. The sound clones were based off of Doom bots, but being cloned by a single perfect sound soldier, instead of being machines. Consequently, though, when they were ripped apart they left a very large mess. "Calm down, Kit." Kyuubi echoed in his mind as the blonde pounded his fists into the face of another sound clone, "We'll get the sick bastard, but you gotta calm down. Think of famine. How are you going to protect her if you kill her?" Just before his fist ran through the last of the clone's brains and impacted against the steel, War stopped and took some deep breaths. "I gotta get to famine," War grumbled just as a sound clone rushed him. He caught the clone in one arm and effortlessly snapped his neck without moving the other. 132 times, and it's always worked, the blonde mused before chuckling and sighing, "Man, I'm fucked up." "Indeed," a voice said behind him. The blonde turned to see Shino with a frightened Famine behind him, her green shield flickering on and off before she saw War, ignoring the blood covering a good portion of his body and rushing to him. War. The girl cried as she jumped into his arms, both of their shrouds becoming active as a clone tried to attack them. It instead shriveled up at the contact of Famine's shield and the young girl began hiccuping through her cries. She's going into shock, the entapath observed, I'll deal with this threat. You care for her. Why isn't she with Agent Hill or Dr. McTaggart? War asked with a growl. Shino looked in War's direction before continuing to walk forward. Before the mutant could demand a response, Shino said calmly, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. is unconscious and the doctor is worthless to the snake. I refuse to leave the girl alone as she is just as powerful as Yuri also because of her father. He's here, isn't he? War snarled as he stood with the shocked Famine in his arms, I'll kill that son of a bitch. I know, Shino said as he adjusted his glasses and his bugs devoured a clone while it was alive, but right now, our objective is to get Sally out of here. She's key to saving Icarus. Stick to codenames. War growled as he walked up to Shino's right, so he is Famine key to getting the mutant hick. Prude, the entapath muttered, she has the ability to absorb and purify substances that are potentially dangerous to Homo superiors or Homo sapiens. Icarus has been infused with God knows what, and as much I wish he was, we don't have Professor Saratobi's assistance on this one. Scarecrow, maybe. War suggested. Shino glanced at the blonde and sighed. Ed? What's the plan? The blonde asked as he pulled Famine closer to himself, as well as try to keep from thinking over the dead. The dark teen noted this and looked ahead. We have to stop over in Los Angeles to meet with a few runaways and get some help on this one, he replied, and if we're going to be using codenames, I believe I shall become Pestilence. 3 of the 4 are together, only one is left, War thought as he chuckled before looking ahead to the escape vehicles, where a certain captain and billionaire were fighting sound clones. Looks like we aren't needed, the newly named Pestilence mused upon seeing Captain America, Iron Man, Wolverine and Spider-Man fighting the clones off. He changed directions and went to an helicopter, can you fly this thing? Always wanted to learn. War shouted over the chaos echoing behind him, take Famine. War? Captain America shouted in question as the teen began to climb in the cockpit, War. Give us a hand. We don't have time. Pestilence grumbled before looking at the girl in his arms, start this thing. War and Captain America locked eyes as he shut the cockpit to the chopper. The blonde turned his gaze forward as Caillou began giving him instructions. War pressed a few buttons and threw a few switches that started the rotors, allowing them to hover a few feet off the ground. With a sudden jerk to the right on the controls, the chopper spun 90 degrees and War gripped the cannon controls and spoke into the mic. Avengers. Get down or fry. He shouted, the 4 did as instructed, before he began unloading rounds of 50 California ammunition into the swarm of sound clones that were in the hangar. Pestilence sighed before adjusting Famine on his lap and grasping the missile launcher controls. Move us and I'll take out the invading drop ships. He ordered. War nodded and began maneuvering the helicopter out of the helicarrier. The 4 heroes within waved and saluted as he looked back before he looked forward. And his eyes grew to the size of dinner plates. 6. Team sound. What the fuck is that? Naruto screamed as he pulled back on the controls, making the Apache veer upwards as they exited the helicarrier. Gliding towards them, with silver wings attached to either arm, was a red and black suited man. The man had a helm-like face mask that was colored a dark red and his hair was shaved, allowing decorative flame tattoos to cover his scalp. I believe that is the latest Banshee, Shino mumbled, adjusting his targeting system to lock on heat signatures, Dosu if I recall correctly. One of Hebe Sennin's little pet experiments, last I checked. He's a clone of the first Banshee. Really? War asked, arching a blonde brow as his red eyes glowed with anger and he smiled maliciously, then let's see just how much of a ripoff he is. Can you fly this thing? I can do better, Shino said, black bugs crawling over his skin from holes hidden under his clothes, my bugs will fly for us. You worry about yourself. Take care of her, pest, War quietly said before he opened the cockpit and stood, allowing his red shroud to cover his body. The blonde pulled his right arm back before thrusting it forward, allowing a long tendril of red aura to branch out and latch onto a passing sound helicopter. War pushed off and brought himself to the copter, while Pestilence's insects shut the cockpit and took control. Pestilence noted a small piece of equipment was missing from the pilot seat and a smirk grew on his face before he flipped a switch and said, you took the headset. How else we gonna stay in contact, Dumbus? War shot back, get that chopper out of here, fuck you. A scream was heard in the background, followed by a large explosion that caught Pestilence's eye to his left. He watched as War leapt to another copter and then listened as the mutant continued, get Famine out of here. First RV is that gas station 30 clicks west. Second RV is the Golden Gate, head there if I'm not at that station 15 minutes after you arrive. Ammon won't like not having you around, Pestilence said, before swearing under his breath as Banshee made another swoop past and fired a sonic shriek at him, nearly hitting the blades. The Entapath had his bugs head to the treetops to avoid the following attack that would take place. Don't you think I know that? War shot back over the comms, listen, if Ammon goes berserk, call X, I repeat, call X. Radio silence. Now. Roger that, War, engaging radio silence. RV at the gas station 30 clicks, Pestilence muttered as he flipped the comm switch off and fired several flares to redirect the missiles coming towards him. The teen's eyes widened behind his glasses when a black-haired teen jumped up from the treetops and threw his arms out, his palms open and a grin on his face, before a sudden force hit the chopper in the tail. Or looked to his right as an explosion at the treetops came to his attention and he felt a faint ghost pain on his right arm. The blonde's red eyes narrowed in fury and he grit his teeth before returning his attention to the helicopter he was hijacking crashing. You son of a bitch, War snarled, flying the chopper into the side of a carrier, but bailing out the left oar and landing on the flying Banshee's back. Ah. What the fuck? Banshee exclaimed as War wrapped his arms around the bald teen's neck. War used his aura to cling onto the other mutant's back and moved to his knees. He bent forward before clutching Banshee's jaw and the back of his skull firmly in each hand. You're flying in a no-fly zone, the blonde snarled into his ear before snapping the clone's neck, and I'm grounding you. War rode the corpse into the treetops before jumping onto a pine branch only 20 feet from the forest floor. Banshee's body flew past him and impacted into a boulder jutting up from the ground. War smirked and cracked his neck before jumping to the ground, dismissing his aura after he landed. That could have ended better, Caillou muttered in his head, making Naruto silently agree with him. The AI continued with, Vision gave me a small upgrade. I can act as your heartbeat radar, rather than you having to focusing on that. Keeps our defense up and keeps you focused on your own drive. Thanks, Naruto thought before making his way towards the place he saw the helicopter go down. As he neared the impact zone, a soft tune made itself known in his head. Naruto shook his head to try and clear it, but to no avail. Picking up on several heartbeats, Caillou informed him, keep your eyes open. Naruto didn't respond, instead he stopped running and grabbed his head. The tune was getting louder. The blonde growled in annoyance and turned to the nearest tree, gripped the trunk with both hands, and drove his face into the bark with as much effort as he could. To his immediate relief, the tune stopped, but to his ire, laughter took its place. Ha! Only way he could escape the song was to slam his face into that tree. A male voice laughed out from the trees. Naruto spun around and kept his back to the trunk to be sure he wouldn't be surrounded, before slowly calling his aura forward. Dude. He's like, all fucked up. Another voice laughed out, looks like someone finally broke your spell, succubus. Fuck you, faggot cocksucker. A female's voice snapped, anger burning within it, how was I supposed to fucking know that Dumbus would fucking slam his ugly ass face into the fucking tree? You shouldn't cuss so much, succubus, a baritone voice most likely belonging to a male chided. A yelp echoed through the woods, making Naruto fight back a smirk, before the same voice said, you also shouldn't hit me. Fuck you, fatus. The female snarled. Naruto closed his eyes and sniffed before covering his face and groaning. Oh dear god. The blonde thought as he fought the stench away, what the fuck? Geez kid, I thought you were bad after a burrito. Alright, god Caillou said, the AI sounding maliciously happy as it continued, a click north. One branch. Take him. Gladly, War growled, his eyes opening as he thrusted his two arms forward and sent large red fists into the trees. A crash was heard, followed by several exclamations from the four voices he had heard before. War smirked and brought his hands back, slightly dimming the intensity of his aura to keep his true strength hidden. He started to turn to run towards the forest when a large rock hit him in the side of the head and sent him flying into the woods. Pestilence groaned as he sat up from the wreckage. He looked around and noted some dead bugs that sacrificed themselves for his and Sally's lives. The hooded teen tried to get to his feet but released a small cry of pain when he felt a stabbing burn in his right leg. Pestilence looked down to see a piece of shrapnel embedded in his thigh, making him scowl in anger. He wasn't so tough. A voice said from his left. Pestilence looked over and scowled as he saw the teen that had caused his crash. He had spiky black hair and a face mask similar to Banshee's, only his was grey instead of black or red. He had a black shirt with yellow writing on it, the words kill, kill, kill. Being visible through the thriller-esque writing. His pants were camouflage printed, being the variations of the color grey, and he wore combat boots. Aki Dumbus, a female said to the teen's right, making the injured hero look at her and estimate her to be near his age. She had long black hair and camouflage pants similar to her counterpart, but she instead covered her torso with a grayish-green flak jacket, the sleeves being missing on her arms, while black armbands were around her wrists. Around her head was a blue cloth with a metal plate, the symbolic single node in the dead center of the plate. What had Pestilence concerned was the young girl in the female's arms. Sally was, thankfully, uninjured, but she had a pained look on her face as she remained unconscious. The hooded teen swore quietly under his breath before pushing himself to his feet, an audible grunt of pain coming from him as he stood on his injured leg. "Oh yeah. I get to have some more fun." The guy said with a grin. "Stay back, Kin, this loser is mine." "Umbus," Kin said with a shake of her head before looking at Pestilence with a smirk, "how's it fair? 2-on-1, not to mention he's got a piece of metal in his thigh." "It's only a flesh wound," Pestilence calmly said, gripping the offending metal in his right hand before yanking it from his leg, groaning as he did so. The boy grinned. "Oh, this is too easy," the boy said, stepping forward and holding one hand out, revealing a hole in his hand. "Just so you know, they call me Soundwave." "Rip-off artist," Pestilence neutrally jibed, making the now-named Soundwave scowl. He lifted his other hand and narrowed his eyes as a grin appeared on his face. "For that, I'm gonna leave no evidence," the mutant exclaimed before an invisible force of energy shot from his hands and into Pestilence's stomach. The entapath flew back several yards before his back connected with the trunk of a tree and he fell to his face on the ground. "Come on, Soundwave," Kin said with exasperation in her voice, "Orochimaru-sama wants us back with this brat. We don't have time for this." Yeah, Soundwave waved off her nagging, "let me have some fun, will ya? Besides, we still have to wait for Banshee." Pestilence growled as his broken glasses fell off his face and pushed himself to his hands and knees before slowly standing. He closed his eyes and lifted his left hand while his right covered the gaping hole on his thigh. He snapped his eyes open, revealing solid dark purple irises before glaring at Soundwave. "Looks like it's time to turn up the decibels." Soundwave exclaimed with a grin as he opened his hands. Seeing this, Pestilence pointed his opponent and narrowed his eyes. Buzzing was heard around the clearing they were in and a black cloud flew at Soundwave. Said mutant yowled in pain as they entered into the holes in his hands, clogging his main attack. What the fuck? Get them out. Get out. Soundwave yelled, opening his palms and aiming at Shino. "Get out." "I wouldn't fire if I were you," Shino warned as the purple glow in his eyes vanished and they returned to their normal coal black color. "I had them clog the tunnels in your arms, allowing no air to breach their plug. Thousands upon thousands of impregnated flies are in your arms and if you try to force them out, you'll only hurt yourself and they'll lay their eggs. If you survive your injuries, you'll slowly die as the maggots devour your body from within." "That's shit. Why you're lying. I don't believe you." Soundwave exclaimed, a maniacal smile on his face as he aimed his palms at the two girls on his left. "I'll kill them. I'll kill them if you don't get those maggots out." "Fool. I said it was pointless." Shino mumbled before standing and leaning back against the tree. He reached into his left pocket and pulled another pair of sunglasses out, placing them on his face before adjusting them and looking at the crazed mutant. "Give me the girl and I'll have the maggots out." "No. Fuck you, fuck this little bitch, and fuck Orochimaru-sama's order." Soundwave shouted, pointing one hand at Shino and leaving the other on his shocked teammate and Sally. "Everyone dies today." "No," Pestilence said as a purple glow grew behind his sunglasses, "just you." Soundwave yelled in pain as he tried to fire, only to sever his arms at the elbow. His eyes rolled into his head and he fell to his knees before a single word left his mouth. "Damn it." The body fell to the ground and Shino shook his head before groaning and grabbing his leg. As soon as he bent over, 3 strings wrapped around his body and bound him to the tree. The entapath looked up with annoyance at the slightly blood-covered Kin. "Why you stay there?" Kin ordered, shaking with fear as she slowly backed up, one hand outstretched towards him as the other arm cradled the unconscious Ally. "I too mean it. Stay there." "Where are you, War?" Shino thought as he reached out quietly to a family of praying mantis that were resting on the opposite side of the tree he was bound to. "I am," exclaimed a man with 6 arms as he dropped to the ground next to the bloody mess that was MK-36, "That son of a bitch got hit." "Not a bad throw, Hiroshima," a white-haired man with a second head sticking out of his back said. "Look at that impact, Woungees. Too bad he's dead. He would have been fun to fight." No sooner had the words left his mouth did Naruto snap his eyes open, revealing red irises in both eyes, before a grin appeared on his face. "Glad you think so, Dumbus." He shot a fist up and drove it into the jaw of the two-headed man, sending him flying into the air. The other 3 around him leapt back, the 6-armed man leaping up to catch the two-headed man, and he stood. With a long crack from his neck and a roll of his shoulders, War lifted his aura-covered hands and interlocked the fingers before cracking his knuckles loudly. He grinned, revealing a bloody mouth, before reaching up to touch his healing wound. The 4 attackers watched with wide eyes as his head regenerated quickly, leaving only a very red blotch of blonde hair. "That wasn't very nice," War chided with a scowl. "I was on my way to Grandma's house. Now how will she get my delicious homemade cookies?" "Cookies?" the large man parroted, his eyes going wide and a small drool appearing on his face. The red-headed girl with white horns protruding from her head elbowed the large man in his side. "You fucking fattest. Focus on killing that fucker," she shouted. War glanced at her and groaned as Kaya made his less desirable side known. "Hot damn, look at that chest," the AI exclaimed. War shook his head and growled, his eyes locking on Succubus, if he remembered correctly, before he formed more aura around him. She had a tan shirt over a black form-fitting body armor shirt and brown cargo shorts with a purple rope holding her pants up. War recognized the rope on the other three and realized it must be their team thing. "Succubus, women shouldn't cuss," the large man, Mount, chided, only to be stabbed in the leg by a wooden flute. Mount yowled in pain and grabbed his leg, looking at the girl with questioning eyes. "Kill that fucker, and I might not do it again, fattest," Succubus snarled. Mount nodded and looked at War, narrowing his eyes as he punched a fist into an open palm. War's scowl turned into a smirk as he looked over the first of the four to step forward. He was large, muscled but fat, similar to Blob if War recalled the mutant correctly, and wore black running shorts under the purple robe, as well as having only an orange small mohawk on his head. "So, we get some names for these guys?" War asked his AI, only to receive an annoyed growl. The blonde's frowning face returned and he thought, "Then just warn me if they try to gang up on me." "Gotcha kit. Orochimaru-sama ordered me to bring your corpse in," Mount said, walking forward before settling into a sumo wrestler-esque stance across from him, "but I fight with honor. I am Mount, named after Mount Fuji, for nothing can end my existence. Not even time." "We'll see about that," War snarled, rushing forward and driving his fist into the large man's gut, making Mount's eyes bulge as his mouth dropped open into a silent scream. The blonde jumped back with a handspring as Mount fell to his knees. War growled before rushing forward and jumping, grabbing the obese mutant's head and falling to his back, breaking the fragile cartilage kneecaps that were holding up his enormous body weight. "Ah!" Mount cried out in pain, "You son of a bitch. Goddamn motherfucker." War smirked as he got to his feet before kneeling and gripping the face of the large mutant. With a smirk planted on his face, he leaned forward and whispered, "Tell me something I don't know, blind asshole." "What?" Mount questioned before War drove his thumbs into his eyes, gouging them out with a sinister smirk on his face. Mount cried out in pain and was luckily saved by the six-armed man, who leapt at the blonde mutant, driving 3 shoulders into his back and causing War to flip in midair before landing on both feet in a crouch, his hands clenched together. "Mount. Oh shit, Mount, are you alright?" the six-armed man asked, shaking the sobbing mutant as he held his face. "He took my eyes. That son of a bitch took my eyes," Mount exclaimed, pulling his hands away to reveal 2 bleeding holes in his head. The six-armed man clenched all of his fists and looked up at War with a glare. War smirked and held his hands up, wiggling his thumbs that had 2 red orbs on each tip. "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind," the blonde said with a smirk before turning to the left to avoid the 3 punches, one from each hand, that the six-armed man tried to hit him with as he appeared before the blonde. War smirked and twisted into a roundhouse kick, hitting the six-armed man in the back and sending him skidding along the ground before flicking the 2 eyes off his fingers. "Names first," said War as he crossed his arms, "they call me War. Who are you?" "All you need to know is that I'm the one that's gonna knock that smile off your face." The dark-skinned man snarled before rushing towards War once again. War called upon his aura to form a large claw over his left arm, slicing upwards and cutting off the 3 hands that threatened to harm his person. "Fuck." The man swore as he skid along the ground before clenching his teeth as 3 more arms regenerated into existence. He smirked at the scowling blonde and said, "If you must know, they call me Man Spider." "Lame," War noted, upsetting his opponent profoundly, "so far, the only name that seems right is Sucky over there." "Oh, that's it. This motherfucker is mine," Succubus exclaimed as she rushed into the fight, throwing her own punch War's way. War grinned as he caught it in his own hand. "You know, we don't have to be enemies," War said, catching her other hand when she tried to punch him in the face. "In fact, I'd much rather be friends with benefits, if you catch my drift." Succubus's face went a shade pinker than normal, and she growled before lifting her leg, nailing him in the groin. War yelped and released her hands, dropping to the ground and cupping himself. "God we?" the blonde asked as he rolled backwards to avoid a kick sent his way from the 3-armed man. He hopped back to his feet and leapt at Man Spider, driving his aura-coated shoulder into the dark-skinned man's gut and making him grunt. War gripped the Man Spider's face with a shrouded claw, snarling before he crushed the skull with his bare hand. War stood and looked at the 2 remaining sound mutants. "2 down," War panted out, cracking his neck on both sides before grinning, 2 to go. 7. Muse. "Come on, Sucky, that's the best you got." War taunted as he dodged another left hook. The red-headed girl shrieked in irritation before charging at him once again. The other sound mutant had yet to join in the fight, and yet did he introduce himself. War had Caillou keep a lock on the unknown mutant while he fought the attractive girl. "I'm going to fuck you up." Succubus snarled. War smirked as he caught her right front. Her attempted left roundhouse side kick was caught by his right arm, allowing him to pull her close. The two-headed mutant smirked, his face turning a shade red as he realized just what the two warring mutants looked like in their current position. War's arm was hooked under Succubus's left knee, and he pulled her arm around his neck, wrapping his right arm around her waist. "Well, Mia War purred, making the redeeded girl's cheeks match her hair. "Why are we fighting if you just want to get in my pants? If you want, I know a cheap motel just a few miles outside the city." "You motherfucking pervert, let go of my goddamn leg before I choke you." The embarrassed mutant hissed as she tried to free herself. War laughed and pushed the girl away, making her stumble, before he countered with a smirk, "Well, I guess I could make sure my healing factor doesn't kill me before you get off, my little dominatrix." The two-headed mutant roared with laughter as Succubus's face turned bright red. War crouched down in a ready fighting position, a grin on his face, as the female mutant hopped up and charged at him. She leapt into a flying roundhouse kick, only for it to be caught by the object of her ire's hand once again. Acting quickly, Succubus spun her hips in an attempt to use her free leg to nail War in the head. War simply smirked even more as he blocked the strike again. "Well, this could be considered compromising from an outside viewer," War chuckled out as he pulled Succubus in so her legs wrapped around his waist, quickly grabbing her wrists when she lifted her arms to strangle him. Red orbs bored into chocolate brown before War slammed his forehead into the female mutant's, knocking her unconscious with a blow. "Oh shit." The two-headed mutant exclaimed as War laid the unconscious girl down on the ground. His eyes snapped back up, but rather than being playful rubies, they were blood-red orbs hardened in anger. "I don't kill women when I don't have to," War explained as he stood, "but two-headed fucks that work for Roch American side are yourself a dead man." The mutant laughed and crouched into a fighting stance, "Call me Seiken." "No codename?" War asked with an arched brow. "I mean you had Mount, Man Spider, and Sucky here." "My brother and I prefer our names," Seiken explained with a grin as the second head shook slowly. Seiken looked over his shoulder to the growth and said, "Wake up, we've gotta fight." "Okay brother," the other head said as, to War's shock, it slowly began separating from the mutant's body. Once fully separated, Yukon walked out to Seiken's left and stretched, "Man, I'm teared cold we have stayed joined for this." "No," Seiken answered as he looked back at a ready War, "this guy got MS and fatty." "I see. Boy." War snarled, "We gonna fight or what?" "After you," Yukon gestured one twin to the other. Yukon grinned and his skin darkened to a light red, a single horn growing from his visible forehead. He rolled his neck before rushing towards an even more surprised War. "Prepare to die." Yukon exclaimed as he leapt at the blonde mutant. War snarled and brought his cloak up in preparation, his right hand cocking back to deliver a punch. He swung just as Yukon got in range, but missed. War blinked in confusion when he lost sight of the target. Then he felt immense pain in his stomach. "Fuck!" exclaimed the blonde as he held his gut. His AI snarled in anger and War fell to one knee, "God damn it." "What?" "Ah ha ha." Seiken laughed triumphantly, his green eye locking on the pained red of War's. "You ready to die, War?" "Good. Because you're going to die slowly and painfully. Yukon is my younger twin brother, but our mutation weakened him. He has to rest nearly 22 hours a day within my body. He can get stronger though. By residing in the bodies of others." Instead of exclaiming worry like Seiken expected, War started chuckling lowly. The mutant became wary when the target of his incapacitated squad began laughing loudly. Seiken then felt a tug from his connection with his brother. Yukin's head popped out of War's shoulder and he had lost his demon-like appearance, now his face was littered with cuts and he was bleeding profoundly. Seiken rushed at War, only for the mutant to backhand him away with his cloak-covered hand. Yukin cried out, "Brother." "Shut up." War snarled, punching the mutant in the face, "You decided to invade me. Well here's a Jiraiya's incredible non-human combat uniquely remodeled impossible to kill individual anatomy lesson for you. Each one of us has a small group of nanomites that attack any invaders to our system." Yukin choked as War gripped him by the throat and slowly pulled him from his body. What are you?" War smirked as he gripped the mutant by both sides of his head before snapping his neck. From a mile in the woods War heard a scream of agony that suddenly silenced, making him scoff. Apparently, the brothers shared more than just a body. The blonde mutant went over to the still unconscious Redeed and knelt next to her before hooking his right arm under her shoulders and his left under her knees. The Redeed released a small sound as he picked her up, making the blonde smirk as he walked away from the area of death. Whatever her name was, there was no way in hell he was going to continue referring to her as Succubus. Wonder if Pest got Famine to safety yet, the blonde thought as his AI directed the nanomites to heal certain internal wounds. I'm certain that your newfound companion has gotten her to safety, Caillou answered as it multitasked, but then again, I have been wrong before. Just then, a scream echoed through the forest. I want war. Naruto growled as his eyes flashed red and he inwardly thought, you just had to say it, didn't you? Locate them, now. Moments EARLIER. Okay, I can make this work, Kin muttered as she held Famine and paced in front of an irritated Shino Aburam, Aka Pestilence. The girl was in shock that her team was dead and that she had to somehow get back to Orochimaru. Just let the girl go and I promise no harm will come to you, Pestilence stated as the nearby Mantis family began cutting his binds. Shut up. Kin barked, lifting her hand at the mutant and wrapping wires around the shade-wearing teen's mouth, Jay just shut up so I can think. Pestilence eyed quietly before quickly biting through the bands of threat covering his mouth. He looked in irritation at the pacing sound mutant before speaking again, I give you one more chance to be silent. And I'm sure I told you to shut the fuck up. The girl cried before pulling a knife out and holding it to the unconscious Ali's neck, shut up or she'd eyes. As you wish, Pestilence relented as he became silent and analytic again. He watched as the girl began pacing again, groaning internally as he quickly became bored. A buzzing caught his attention and he looked to his left where a small fruit fly landed just beneath his goggle. Is that right? The Entapath said quietly to the bug, which buzzed in reply, causing Pestilence to arch a brow subtly, intriguing. Hey. Shut up. Kin screamed, I hear you whispering. Sorry, I was just informed by a fly that Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze is currently en route to my position, Shino swiftly lied. Naruto wasn't coming to him exactly, but he was on his way towards the rendezvous point and expected to see both Sally and Shino there. When neither would be in eyesight, the blonde would find them. A thought of concern then crossed the Entapath's mind. I hope he directs his anger towards this girl rather than me. Naruto. Kin whimpered as her eyes widened, War is alive. Why wouldn't he be? Asked the shaded teen, he is the prized 9th survivor, after all. But Orochimaru-sama sent the 4 after him, no one beats the 4. Kin shouted before glaring at Shino, you're trying to psyche me out. Fucker. Shino grunted as more threads bound him to the tree and the Mantis family buzzed in irritation. A soft groan earned the spy-trained mutant's attention and he glimpsed at the girl in his foe's arms. Sally was slowly waking up. Hintsuchi, Shino muttered quietly, I will ask, no. I will demand you unbind me and give me the girl. Now. I said keep your fucking mouth shut. Kin shrieked as she threw a small needle at him. Shino grunted as it struck him in the space between his collarbone and the shoulder plate, the muscle it was embedded in going numb. War. A soft voice whispered. Kin froze and looked down at the girl in her arms, a bead of sweat dropping down her cheek. Sally blinked several times before looking around. Her arm hurt a little and she really wanted some food. Maybe War could make some of that noodle mix he's good at. The little girl looked around before her eyes locked on the creepy yet kind mutant War was angry at. Now would be the time to act, Famine, the mutant's voice echoed in her mind as she locked her eyes on his glasses-covered ones. The young mutant instantly knew he was using telepathy and looked around before her eyes locked on a strange girl she'd never seen before. Where's War? Sally asked quietly. Shut up, replied the stranger. I want war. I said shut up, the stranger hissed. I want war. Exclaimed Famine as her eyes gained a green glow. Green energy expanded from her body and sent the stranger flying into the woods. Famine had tears rolling down her cheeks and wanted nothing more than to find War. Impressive, a voice commented to her left. The young mutant jumped and looked at the owner of the voice, relaxing slightly upon seeing it was the bound Entapath. Where's War? I want War, whimpered the girl as she slowly closed the distance between them. Famine, the mutant said softly, I can't help you until you help me. My name is Shino Aburam, remember? At her nod, he continued stoically, good. For now, call me Pestilence. Now, can you manipulate your energy like War? I can make shields, Famine whispered after a moment, and he can drain, but I don't like to drain, unless it's War. At this, Pestilence remained silent before he suddenly ripped his arm free. Famine jumped back and a sphere of green energy shot out around her instinctively. The Entapath commanded a few nearby bugs to bite through the remaining strands before brushing the residue off. Once finished, Shino adjusted his glasses and looked down at the still shielded Famine. Sorry, he said in a monotone, I was really getting a cramp and I didn't want to wait for Naruto. Sally's shield fell and she slowly nodded before looking around. Noticing this, Shino spoke again, she's unconscious 30 feet to the east. Impressive repulse control for a child your age. Considering who your father is though. What? Sally asked quietly in confusion. Shino sighed and shook his head, never mind, Sally. Come, let's get to the rendezvous point before War demolishes a city looking for you. The older mutant offered his hand to which the younger one was hesitant to take. Shino looked up as a fly buzzed overhead before flying in a certain direction. The entapath spoke once more before they began moving towards the rendezvous point. Now, Sally, what do you know about bugs? The resent. Fuck, Naruto growled as he landed in a clearing that was covered with Shino and Sally's scent. I must have missed them by 15 minutes. Well, considering you have baggage, I'm not all that surprised, commented the AI with a bit of annoyance. Speak of the devil. The bitch is waking up. Be ready. No shit, thought the blonde idly as he laid the redeeted mutant down against a tree, backing up and sitting cross-legged as he waited for his baggage to wake up. Fucking assholes must have left my ass behind, Succubus snarled quietly as she rubbed her head. Damn it, I knew we should have ganged up on that shithead. That's no way to treat your current caretaker, a familiar voice chuckled out, making the girl's chocolate eyes snap open and lock on the blonde sitting across from her. She stared for a moment at the solid blue orbs that reminded her of a rough ocean during a storm, before snapping from her gaze and growling. What now, motherfucker? Asked Iridid as she slowly adjusted herself into a pre-pounce position. Gonna rape me? Nah, not my forte. Besides, I get the feeling if I do that, you won't be my friend, the blonde said playfully, dodging a flying redeed shortly afterwards by leaning back. You dumbus. Snarled Succubus as she rolled into another ready stance, while her opponent merely spun on his back before leaping up onto his feet in a stance. We're fucking enemies, moron. So that's a no on the friendship thing. Can we still have sex? Naruto asked with a grin before catching the girl's fist in his hand. Whoa, deja vu. Stop toying with me, asshole. The girl snarled as she attempted to kick herself free. Naruto acted faster and caught her under the knee, his hand latching on her thinly covered thigh and getting a blush to grow on her face. First off, my name isn't asshole, Naruto grumbled in annoyance, it's Naruto War, depending on my mood. And right now, I ain't too happy about not being reunited with my team. You're lucky I need answers or I'd kill you now. Might as well kill me, shitface, hissed the girl, cuz I ain't squawking. Who said I'd be interrogating you? War asked as his eyes flashed red. My pal Pest is much better at getting answers. Then what are ugh? The mutant gasped as a fist embedded itself in her stomach, causing her to lose all air in her lungs before she fell to her knees. That was for the kick to the balls, War snarled, grabbing her head and tilting it up, forcing her to look him in the eye. Now, answer one question, and we'll get back to finding Pest. Fuck you, Succubus gasped out as she tried to regain air. War's eyes darkened dangerously, and a sadistic smirk crossed his face. For once, Succubus wished she had a different mutation, because she had a feeling that her control over musical tones wouldn't help her. Gladly, War growled as he pushed the girl to the ground. He wrapped his hand around her throat and growled again as his aura flickered on. The redeed gasped for air and War hissed into her ear, answer my question, and I won't rape you here. Why you said, Succubus was interrupted by the smirking blonde restraining her. I said it wasn't my forte, he quipped, I never said I wouldn't do it. What's your damn question? Hissed out the redeeded mutant with loathing lacing her words. Name, age, and mutation. Well, he certainly surprised her with that one. Teia, she answered after a minute, my name is Teia. I won't fucking tell you my goddamn age because I don't fucking want to, and my mutant ability is controlling the effect sounds and tones have on fuckers like you. Borg glared hard at her before smiling kindly and saying, thank you. The fuck did you just say? Teia hissed before her lips were suddenly covered by his. Before she could begin struggling, he broke the kiss and patted her cheek. That was for the mutation information, babe, Naruto answered with a smirk as he released a grip on her throat, keeping her pinned by having a hand on her shoulder. Now, why are you called Succubus? I answered your damn questions. Teia snarled, her hands being restrained above her by the blonde's own. Now either kill me or go the fuck away before I kill you. Those about no. Naruto replied with a foxy grin, let's play a game, Teia. Fuck you, asshole. If you're good, maybe you can, purred the blonde huskily to her, getting a beet red face in response as the mutant began sputtering in embarrassment. Damn kid, chuckled out his AI, keep this up and we're scoring tonight. We nothing. You're just the creepy guy watching from a telescope, thought the mutant with a smirk before his thumb slowly began caressing Teia's wrist. The blonde spoke again, now, answer my questions and I'll give you some more rewards. You're sick. No, I'm horny, but that's beside the point, casually replied the blonde, who grinned as his current prisoner turned a new shade of red. Now, why are you called Succubus? I don't know, okay. The fucking pedophile assigned me the name, Teia replied quietly as she averted her eyes. Her eyes widened again when his lips pressed against hers again. The redeed stiffened while her current interrogator began passionately making out with her. She fought the curling of her toes for a good minute before relenting and relaxing into the kiss, slowly responding. Before she could get the kiss to go further, he broke it once again. Well, someone's attention deprived, Naruto chuckled out before smiling at his prisoner. How long have you been working for the snake? My whole life, Taya answered, covering her rash answer with a false harsh glare. Why the fuck do you care? Her silent wish of getting another kiss was answered, and her body failed to stiffen, her responding kiss making Naruto groan in anticipation. He didn't care that she tried to kill him, and to be honest, she wasn't entirely pissed that he was forcing himself on her. It was kind of kinky. When he broke the kiss again, she groaned, "Goddamn it, just fuck me already." "I would, but there's the whole 'you're my enemy' thing," Naruto softly replied, getting a whine of disapproval from the retarded mutant. Redirecting his attention to her neck, he asked, "Any family?" "Mom ran off with a boyfriend, and my cocksucker of a dad died in a crash," Taya answered before softly moaning when he began kissing her neck. "Oh fuck." Yeah, I'm getting there," interrupted the blonde, "but first, do you know who's responsible for Leaf's destruction?" "Uchiha brothers," Taya gasped out. "Orochimaru hired them to torch the place and everyone inside. Some were away on mission, so God, do that again." "What?" Naruto asked before he lightly ground his covered erection against her wedding mound. "This?" "Yes." The redhead groaned in lust. "Oh shitfic, I'm so close." Chided the blonde as he continued to grind against her slowly. "One more question." "I should fucking kill you," Taya whimpered. "I should, but I can't." Ignoring her, Naruto asked, "Are you loyal to Orochimaru?" "Fuck no," was the quick reply. "The asshole puts fucking bombs in our shoulders to ensure loyalty." "Fucking asshole." "Easily solved," Caillou chimed in. "I'll slip a few nanos in your sperm, and they'll keep her safe." "You really are desperate for me to get laid again, ain't ya?" Naruto thought in amusement before he focused on the girl he was lusting for. Bringing his lips down to hers, he kissed her once before he spoke. "I'm going to release your arms now. Try to kill me, and I'll use you as my cum dumpster before offing you." "God, that's so fucking hot right now," Taya groaned as he released her arms. As soon as he did, she moved her hands to his shoulders and grabbed at the red shirt covering his torso, attempting to rip it off. Upon struggling with it, she growled angrily and dug her nails into the fabric. "X-Men issued," chimed an amused blonde before lightly gripping her matcha-skinned wrists. "Patience, Taya-chan." Before she could reply, he pushed himself up and grabbed his shirt's edge, pulling it off and tossing it to the side. The redhead released a light moan upon seeing his defined form and excitedly ran her hands over his chest. "Goddamn, if I'd have known you were a fucking stud, I'd never try to kill you," Taya said as she began rubbing his firm pectorals. "Then we'd have never met," Naruto quipped. Taya ignored it as she began lowering her hands. Reaching his belt, she frowned when he grabbed her hand and stopped her. "You get more once I get more," he said sternly. They shared a quick glare before the redhead pushed him to the left, rolling them as she straddled him. Grabbing the purple rope around her waist, she hurriedly pulled it off and tossed it into the wood, unknowingly knocking a slowly waking kin back out. Eagerly, she pulled her tan top off and tossed it near Naruto's own. Upon revealing her breasts to the blonde, she smirked when he just froze. "Virgin, hot stuff?" she asked. Taya gasped in mild surprise when he suddenly unsnapped the bra from the back and quickly began caressing her girls. "Hardly," Naruto shot back with a smug grin, "but it's been about 5 months since I saw a decent pair on a legitimate mate." "Did you just call me a fucking mate?" Taya asked with a scowl, before yelping when he pushed her to her back and stared down at her with slitted blue eyes. "Yeah, got a problem with it?" He growled before smirking as his eyes reverted to a normal pupil. "You're a mate, now." "My mate." "We'll see, Blondie," grumbled Taya as she reached down and into his pants. "For now, get that fucking twig out and..." She paused as her hand brushed something hard, long, and thick. The chocolate brown eyes went from his blue orbs to the place where her hand was and back to the amused eyes before she felt something snap in the back of her mind. "If you want, we can wait until we're out of the 4-woe." Naruto exclaimed in shock when he was suddenly rolled again and his pants were pulled down to his ankles, a bit uncomfortably if one were to ask him. He groaned as Taya quickly pulled her own pants and black panties down before rubbing her sex against his lethal weapon. "Oh shit," Taya moaned. "Fuck, I swear I creamed myself when I felt it. Got him, asshole. You know how fucking mad I am that you hid this from me?" "And talk brain shut down," Naruto grunted out as he slowly slipped out of coherent thought. "Shit, if you're gonna ride me, hurry up and do it." "No need to ask me twice," Taya snapped back as she stopped grinding her wet sex against his 9-inch long, 2-inch thick cock. The redeeded mutant positioned the purpling head at her opening before lowering herself onto it, moaning as he stretched her innards. "Oh shit," Naruto groaned, his eyes squeezing shut as the tight and warm entrance he was parting made his balls swell. "Fuck, too much fucking foreplay." Oh shit." Taya screamed as she went for broke and impaled herself on his rod. Sweat was already covering the matcha-skinned girl and she panted as an orgasm passed from simply having him enter her. The girl panted before reaching back to her pants and panties, pulling both off her legs so she could move easier. Naruto's hands went from her waist to her heart-shaped ass, squeezing the firm buttocks as her sex slowly stopped milking him despite the fact he hadn't come yet. The blonde mutant groaned before rocking his waist up, thrusting into the redeed and getting a girlish squeal from her upon doing so. "Oh fuck yes." She cried out as she began bouncing on him, "Shit, it's so big. You fucking stud, you're gonna tear me in half." Oh fuck," the blonde moaned in response as he began thrusting, "so tight." "Not if you thrust harder." Taya groaned, her fingernails gripping his shoulders as she leaned forward, "Harder. Faster, damn it." Naruto growled back, rolling to his right so that he was on top, "You want it harder." "Yeah, why?" "Can't dish it out," Taya growled challengingly. "You wish," snarled the enhanced mutant as he began thrusting harder and faster into her, the matcha-skinned girl being drilled into the ground by a blur of tanned hips. "Fuck, fuck, fuck, fuck," Taya gasped out in a high pitch, "Oh fuck. Fuck. Shit, I'm almost there," groaned out the blonde. "Fuck. Same oh, fuck. Same here," gasped out his partner. The two continued for another 2 minutes before a final thrust occurred and Naruto's head whipped back, his eyes going completely red as he roared in accomplishment. Taya released an equally loud scream as she joined him in orgasmic bliss. A few more thrusts from both patrons before everything stopped, the sounds of their fucking frightening all animals nearby and leaving them in the silence, save for their soft panting. "Shibestikaver," Taya groaned, her head falling back and her eyes shutting. Naruto nodded as he lowered himself onto her, his own eyes shutting as his heart rate went down. "Good release," he commented before hugging her tightly, getting a pair of arms wrapped around his side in return, "So it now, Muse." "Did you just call me Muse?" "Yeah," Naruto answered, his eyes still shut as he recovered from their interrogation, "Beat succubus, right? And considering your mutation, I think it fits nicely." "We'll see," Taya murmured before they rolled onto their side. The two new lovers stayed in that position for 5 minutes before beginning another round. And another. And another. And then they slept. 8. Battlefield, Santa Monica. In a small coffee shop located on the 3rd Street Promenade, or rather the Santa Monica Farmers Market, a young man wearing a high-collared coat calmly took a sip of his cappuccino before looking at the young girl enjoying a smoothie. Her right arm was bandaged and in a sling made from his shirt. She was wearing a slightly dirtied blue dress and some of her brown hair had dirt in it. The tall teen was talking quietly to the girl. "And so you see that when I used that card, oh, it seems we have company." Shino broke off from his informational droning when he took notice of the retarded girl walking towards them. She was fairly attractive, but nonetheless, not his type as some would say. On her head was a black skullcap, causing her hair to frame her face and a single lock of it to cover part of her right eye. She wore a tan tank top and black shorts, her feet protected by black combat sandals. "Boy. Your name is Shino Abiram, the Pestilence, right?" the girl asked as she approached, a small scowl on her face. A single brow arched and Shino slowly nodded. The girl gave a curt nod back before looking at Sally, tilting her head and narrowing her eyes. Sally stared back before smiling widely. "Boars nearby," she exclaimed with a smile, dropping the smoothie in her hands, which was swiftly caught by Shino's insects. The redeed's eyes widened at the sight of the insect saving the drink before said bug shoved the cold drink into her hands. She involuntarily shuddered before following the stoic teen outside. There Taya witnessed a sight she admitted was heartwarming enough that she could have let out a soft "oh it" that she did. "I heard that," Shino said stoically, getting a glare from the female mutant before she looked back. Naruto picked up the overjoyed Sally and let her flare her aura once before it fell. She had taken in some of his unique aura, as well as speeding up her healing factor. War. I'm so glad you're back." Sally's gleeful voice attracted the attention of many people, one being a young brunette girl almost 12 years old. The girl wore a yellow shirt and jeans, a pink bandana around her head. She tilted her head as the blonde teen gave a small smile to the girl in his arms before he placed her on the ground and nodded to the shady-looking antipath in thanks. Naruto felt a pair of eyes on him and glanced around before locking eyes on the brunette girl that eeped and dropped back to hide behind a seat. "Sorry, kid," Kyuubi said with an unseen but heard frown, "no information on that kid. I took a reading of Sally's health, her arm should heal with a few more infusions of your aura. Other than that, our little famine is ironically, perfectly healthy." Naruto gave a small frown before nodding and looking over at the redeed standing with Shino with a small smile, "Thanks Muse. Pest, thanks for watching Sally." "Of course, Uzumaki," the other teen mutant replied as he handed the cappuccino to the blonde, young Sally, "and I had quite the conversation concerning the cycles of the Danos Plexippus, her mutation, and Shield's funding." Naruto popped the lid off the coffee cup and downed the remaining liquid in one gulp before chucking the plastic cup behind him. His red aura surrounded him instantly, and the tail-like appendage swatted the empty cup into a nearby trash bin. He heard an audible gasp coming from the 12-year-old, but ignored it and looked at Sally with approval. I see Prodigy's little sessions are paying off. You managed to hold a conversation with Pest, eh? Sally pouted, no. Pestland spoke with too many big words sometimes, so I got lost. But he did help my arm. See? Doesn't hurt as much. Pestland says it's cause of my absorption regeneravum. Your healing factor? Taya supplied with an amused smirk. Sally nodded and looked at her with a beaming smile. Yeah, that. The young mutant said before furrowing her brow, hey. Sally looked from the Reed to Naruto and back before looking at Naruto questionably, hey, War, how come she's got some red glow like you? Naruto's eyebrows shot up in alarm and he glanced at Taya, who raised her hands to placate any of his thoughts. The Reed said, don't look at me, shithead. I ain't doing anything, and I certainly ain't glowing red like a fucking beacon. My insects agree with Sally, Shino mused aloud to the small group, Taya does have your scent, and there's a distinct mutant energy lofting off her that is similar to your own, especially near Harrow, I see. Well this is unexpected. What's unexpected? Sally's curious question was muted by the combined growls from Taya and Naruto, shut up. Snapping his glaring eyes from his teammate, Naruto looked to Sally before gesturing to Taya, Sally, meet Taya. Her cover is Muse, in case we're attacked that's what you should call her. I never agreed to that, Taya growled. Naruto gave her a pointed look before he rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's Muse or the other one, the blonde pointed out, already tired of his newest mate's argument over her codename. The Reed's face instantly flushed and she crossed her arms with a huff. Naruto's left eye twitched, but he fought off pursuing the argument with a quiet inner mantra. Anyway, Pest, who are the people we're supposed to meet here with info on the Sandman? Naruto asked as he started walking away, the two girls following with varying expressions, one of annoyance and the other of small wonder as she looked around, while the overdressed teen remained quiet and cool. The three older teens took note that the curious 12-year-old had decided to follow them, attempting to remain inconspicuous and failing miserably. The runaways are a group of young teens with extraordinary abilities, Shino replied, but was cut off when Naruto waved his hand before tapping his head. The Entapath nodded, knowing instantly that KYUUPI was fulfilling its primary function. The runaways consist of 8 young teen heroes, one of them is a freaking dinosaur. Get this kid, these kids are all the offspring of villains. Holy mother of God, one's a freaking Skrull. Skrull. Oh, we have got to meet these kids, kid. They show potential. Caillou drifted off in a ramble and Naruto scowled. Could you please stay on task? Names, powers, anything? The blonde asked his AI with a growl. Naruto waited a few moments and came up to a crossing section. The light shifted to green and he prepared to go when a car suddenly sped past. This might have been a normal circumstance but the car was on fire. People screamed, cars honked, and many other distracting things happened. None of this bothered Naruto though. He was already in the war zone. Muse, take Famine and get over to the nearest group of people. Famine, I want you to protect that group. Understand? He asked as his aura slowly burned his covering shirt away, revealing his X-Man issued body armor. The girl nodded and War looked to Pestilence, who was already being surrounded by insects of various species and sizes. I will take to the rooftops and give you as much as a readout as I can, War, Pestilence said, getting a nod from the blonde. War swiveled back around to the flaming car heading for a man that had been knocked to the ground from the fleeing mob of people. War's aura encased him and he dashed away in a red blur. War leapt onto a tangerine stand, crushing it under his accelerated weight before shooting off it and landing with a short skid in front of the half-trampled man. Had War taken the time to look at the man, he would have noted that it was the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, Joseph Robbie Robertson. War would have also wondered why said reporter was there and probably would have asked, resulting in an in-depth conversation about the Bugle looking to become a national paper, but he didn't. Instead, War's left hand cocked back, his eyes became nothing but red orbs, and the clenched left fist turned blood red. Red means stop. War roared as he slammed his fist into the hood of the approaching firemobile, ignoring the flames as the vehicle's momentum and the sudden impact of his punch caused a 4-door car to flip over him and Robbie. Robbie of course watched all of this happen with wide eyes, the car flipping and the occupant within locking wide eyes with the elderly African-American newspaper editor-in-chief. The flaming car slammed down to earth on all 4 tires, said round objects giving way to the vehicle's weight and collapsing instantly. War ignored the odd look he was receiving from the various people watching, moving to the car and grabbing the handle of the driver's side door. With a grunt, the enhanced mutant ripped the door from its place and yanked the poor pedestrian from his seat. Next time I highly suggest you take the bus, War said to the man that collapsed to his knees with heavy breathing. The red-eyed mutant looked around before pressing his right hand to the Bluetooth-like headset in his adjacent ear and addressed his eyes and ears, "Pest, tell me who did this and you just might find yourself off my shit list for life." "ZZCH, I've located the disturbance. It's SOUND, rather, it's a gun for hire wearing SOUND symbol," Pestilence replied, "it seems to be Flag Smasher." "Ayu?" War silently intoned, receiving a small grunt before the AI spoke, "You've heard of Hydra. The ultimatum is the Canadians' response to that infamous terrorist group and their best cape is the Flag Smasher. This guy has training that could put the Black Widow to shame, note that I said could and not does. Despite all his skills, he has no mutations or enhancements, neither scientifically nor supernatural. He's a C-ranked wannabe. Rip him to shreds." "Thanks Caillou," War thought with a grin as he turned around, his hand going back to the comm link on his ear, "Where's he at? He's assaulting Famine and Muse." War's eyes widened momentarily before he lowered his hand and went into an all-four-limb run. His aura flickered before it blazed, and a second tail appeared, his whisker-like marks becoming jagged and more feral. The pavement beneath his hands and feet cracked before a small boom filled the air. War was on a warpath. Cecily Kincaid was bored. No, scratch that, bored was an understatement. The Mercury humanoid sighed heavily as she sat and idly stirred a cup of matcha as she sat in a coffeehouse near the institute. The other 198 mutants were slowly falling into place, making the mansion feel more complete than it had in the past few months. Her face turned into a small smile, and a tinge of pink appeared on her silver cheeks as she thought of the most recent addition to the mansion that had vanished as quickly as he came in the past month. Naruto Uzumaki. The teenage mutant found herself harboring feelings over the equally young but more talented mutant. Over the past few days before his leaving she had been mulling these feelings around in her head and wondered if Naruto was just a small-time crush, one that would pass and leave her without heartache like Wither had. Unfortunately, as she had finally built up the courage to ask him out, she had overheard his conversation with Dr. McTaggart about them leaving and found her heart cracking. Despite this, she still thought about the blonde that had killed the terrorist Nitro, the incident that he had earned his codename from. Or. The word that sent chills down anyone's spine, either out of excitement for those that were mentally unstable, a certain murk came to Cecily's mind, or dread for those that feared to lose loved ones. It was also the name of one of the biblical four horsemen, and the teenage embodiment of Mercury had contemplated whether Naruto was purposely taking the name of a known evil, or if he was just going for scare factor. She hoped for the latter. "Want a refill, hun?" An waitress asked as she stopped behind the counter Cecily was sitting at. The young mutant looked up in confusion, and the woman, whose nametag read Betty, smiled in a maternal manner, "You've practically touched your matcha, and it's bound to be cold. I can give you a fresh cup at no cost." "Ah, thanks but," Cecily's eyes flickered over to the small television behind the woman in the corner, and her eyes widened, "War. What's that, hun?" Betty asked with a frown. Cecily gave a small smile and pointed at the TV. "Could you turn it up?" "Emmy think I know him," she said quietly, getting a smile from the woman who did as asked. The news was showing the streets of Santa Monica, a glowing red teen racing onto the screen on all fours, his target seeming to be a weapons-wielding cape terrorist shooting at a girl holding her hands up and a green sphere-like shield appearing around them. The terrorist appeared to have a minigun and was laughing in glee as the girl struggled to stay on her feet and keep the shield up. "Naruto, what have you gotten yourself into?" Cecily thought worriedly as she watched. Bor snarled as he leapt at Flag Smasher, his hands outstretched and eager to spill blood. The trained terrorist was having none of it and quickly ducked under the soaring mutant, smirking as he spoke with a French accent. "Olé, little boy." The cape terrorist cackled as he aimed his minigun at the skidding mutant. His finger pulled the trigger and he released a smug laugh, You see. No one can stop SOUND once it is released. The waves of noise travel at full speed and span across miles no man could ever wish to attempt. "It's a good thing I'm not a normal man then," roared the red-cloaked blonde as he shot out of the smoke cloud Flag Smasher's minigun had made. War cocked his hand back and launched it, sending a long tendril of red aura in a claw shape to wrap around the ultimatum's top soldier. Flag Smasher's smirk fell instantly and he started running backwards, keeping his finger on the trigger as he continued to fire bullets at the mutant. "DRR, just die damn it." The Canuck yelled as he tried to follow the blonde strafing form. War kept low to the ground as he ran on 2 feet, throwing his hand down when he suddenly strafed in a diagonal manner. His eyes were locked on the black and white clothed terrorist, wearing the colors of his current employer, and a low growl came from his throat. "I hate scum like you," Naruto growled before he pushed the ball of his foot into the pavement and shot forward, becoming a blur as his red aura died down to only one tail. The rest of the tail seemed to have taken to spinning around his closed fist before he drove it forward and made contact with the terrorist's stomach. The mutant's hand drilled into Flag Smasher's gut and the man gasped for air. Boar kept pushing, gripping the man's shoulder and shoving the terrorist to the ground, causing a deep skid that made a trench in the pavement. Die. Flag Smasher cried as he pressed his minigun into the mutant's chest, a bloody smirk on his face before it fell into one of fear. He pulled the trigger again, and all he received for a response was a whir and the sound of an empty magazine. Yeah, how's about no? War countered with a smirk as he shoved his fist up into the chest cavity where the heart and lungs of his prayer resided. Flag Smasher gasped loudly before he gave the blonde a death rattle and the life faded from his eyes. War scowled and pulled his fist out of Flag Smasher's chest, being sure to turn the man over onto his stomach so that the news cameras in the helicopters above wouldn't catch sight of it. People erupted into cheers and War scowled. He wasn't a heroinette like Captain America and Tony Stark anyway. He snorted as his AI spoke, "You're more like Frank Castle anyway." War. A voice called that made the mutant turn. He was forced to raise his arms to catch the happy and relieved Famine. He held the girl out and arched a brow. "Are you okay?" Famine nodded and gave him a brilliant smile. "Yup. Muse channeled some energy to me and kept my shield going." War's eyes snapped to the brown orbs of his new mate, who huffed and looked to her right. He barely caught her mutter of "damn new mutations, fucking stupid names." "War, as much as I hate to interrupt this moment," Pestilence said into the headset, getting the blonde mutant's attention, "you've got company." War's brow furrowed before he wrapped his arm around Muse and tightened his hold on Famine. He leapt to the right just as a decently sized SUV crashed into the spot he previously occupied. War's eyes snapped to the newcomer and he snarled, the damn kid from before was glaring at him with pink eyes. Her hair was glowing pink as well. That's Molly Hayes, the muscle of the Runaways. She's one of the mutants in the group and she also happens to be the youngest. Oh shit, move. Caillou ordered and War complied as the girl shot forward and her fist cracked the ground. War gaped at the large radius of the impact and his AI continued, "Damn, she's definitely packing a punch behind her small stature. But her power comes with a cost. She gets fatigued rather easily. So I just have to outmaneuver her, right?" War thought as he tossed Famine and Muse to the rooftop of a nearby building. The two girls landed with a roll, Muse stopping on her feet while Famine rubbed her back with a whimper. The blonde mutant winced and called, "Sorry Famine." "Sake War. Kick her butt." Famine called back. War's attention turned back to the mutant as he landed on a streetlight in a crouch, standing straight up as he tilted his head. The girl on the ground glared up at him, "Would you attack those people?" War nearly fell off the streetlight. "What do you mean why did I attack those people? I didn't do that." The older mutant exclaimed before dropping down and grabbing hold of the neck of the light when a car flew overhead. War's eye twitched in irritation, "Girl, you're pissing me off. Stop that. Get down here and fight me then, coward. Or are you gonna be like that bastard in Connecticut?" Molly shot back. War's eyes went blank and he dropped to the ground with his head bowed. His AI had its own personal alarms blaring. Faintly, Kyuubi could make out Pestilence's voice in the headset telling War to remain calm, but… Kit, don't do it. She doesn't know. For the love of God, don't do it. Caillou exclaimed as War's aura exploded around him. War's burning red eyes snapped up and locked on Molly. "I am not like him." War roared as he sent a red fist flying at the girl. Molly's eyes widened as the large hand shot at her. The hand impacted with Molly's face and the younger mutant found herself soaring through several wrecked cars. Before impacting with a wall, War appeared behind her with his right leg behind him in preparation to kick her. "ISIS gonna hurt," Molly thought as her eyes shut in preparation for the strike. "Molly." A voice called out. The girl sighed in relief when a brown blur slammed into the older mutant she was fighting. Exhaustion came over her and before the darkness claimed her as she impacted with the wall, she had one thought. He's got no chance. "Jace, take him down." A girl with black hair and a black corset ordered. A blonde teen wearing large gloves nodded and ran towards the place where Molly's attacker was. He suddenly fell to his knees and cried out in pain when he felt ribs crack. "Lace." He exclaimed when the blur from before flew back and impacted with a car. The blonde boy fell forward and groaned in pain. His link with the dinosaur was a double-edged sword. Strong was the only thought he got from his partner. "I am not like Nitro. I am not a murderer. I am not a monster." War exclaimed as two more energy tails grew from the base of his spine. His eyes were completely red now, black lines appeared around his mouth and eyes, the markings on his face were much thicker, and the energy was causing people in the area to fall to their knees. Nico Minoru swallowed as she felt the energy coming from the teen that had managed to knock Molly out, put old Lace in the side of a car, which consequently put Chase out of action, and had stopped a rampaging terrorist in 15 minutes, with minimal casualties and collateral damage. Nico's legs trembled as the blonde mutant's gaze locked on her. Before she could consider cutting her hand with Chase's switchblade, he vanished and reappeared in front of her. His hand wrapped around her throat and brought her up to his face. Had he not just put the beat down on her little sister and crushed brother figure, she would have admitted he was rather attractive. The energy irradiating off him only enhanced that. However, he had beaten her friends, and now it was her turn. How she wished Victor wasn't at the base, or Carolina and Zavin were here and not shopping in Los Angeles. I'm not like him. 9. Reunions. Nico. Chase, the gloved runaway, cried out in concern as he watched a blonde mutant known as War held his group's leader in a one-handed grip. The shrouded mutant was growling heavily as he kept his clawed hand wrapped around Nico Minoru's throat. The young mage, as there's no other way to categorize her, had her hands wrapped around his wrist. Jay swore as he fought against the pain Lace felt from being tossed into a car. He had to get up. He had to stop this guy. Wire. Had to let the little girl surrounded by a light green orb run past him and slam into the red mutant's leg. The girl had brown hair and a light tan. She looked no older than 10. The Chases and any other witnesses' shock, the girl's orb engulfed all three of them. War, the mutant holding his leader little sister hostage, lost his red glow and the black makeup that surrounded his eyes and mouth. His claws and fangs receded and the thick markings on his cheeks thinned down to whiskers. The blonde mutant released Nico's throat, took one step away from her and the little girl, and then promptly fell on his back into unconsciousness. Naruto's mindscape. Ugh, groaned out the protagonist as he slowly sat up in the sewer that was his mindscape. Keeping himself upright with his left palm, Naruto brought his right hand to his head and ignored the water dripping from it. Oh, good. You're up. The blonde mutant winced at the sudden noise invading his ears, glancing up to look at the moderately sized fox staring at him, 9 tails waving peacefully behind it. The fox's red eyes narrowed and his blackened mouth curled back in a snarl. What the hell happened out there? Nothing, bullshit. The AI cut him off with a sudden roar, making Naruto flinch. One thing he secretly disliked was being scolded by his AI, as we're about to see why. AYUUBI began growing as it growled, and its tails flared around behind it. One tail shot out and wrapped around the blonde's neck. Tightly. Naruto gasped as his blue eyes widened, his airway cut off. Before he could succumb to unconsciousness within his unconsciousness, the tail slackened and he fell to the ground, gasping for air once he pushed himself to his knees. That is what you just did to Nico Minoru. You nearly suffocated a teenager. Exclaimed the AI. Shaking its head, Caillou continued, I thought we were past that part of your life. Naruto coughed as he held his throat, fuck you. I wasn't past that. I'm not ruled by my emotions. Not anymore. And I'm not ruled by your hormones, snorted out the fox-like artificial intelligence. Naruto's eyes flashed red as he glared at the fox before groaning when the power was cut off. Caillou sighed, and this is why I was developed by your father. You can't control your own powers. I've already sent a notification to Hill. We're postponing the rescue mission and returning to the Xavier mansion. You can't do that. Naruto cried out in denial. Glowing orange chains shot out around Naruto and wrapped around him, restraining him. The blonde growled angrily and glared at the disappointed AI. You're not paying attention, Naruto. Without your control you are a liability. Naruto shook his head, growling angrily. Caillou scowled and stomped his foot, getting the blonde mutant's attention and pulling out the big guns. If this continues you will kill either your mates or famine. Naruto's snarling visage slowly dropped into one of horror. The blonde panted heavily and he bowed his head. He then muttered something. Caillou arched a brow. Hum again? It inquired curiously. Naruto's head snapped up in a defeated glare. I said you were right, okay? Snapped the teenage mutant, to need help. Understatement of the century, kid, joked the fox-like AI, you talk to voices in your head, for God's sake. Naruto felt his eye twitch as he stared with a deadpan expression at the large creature before he asked, you decide now is the time to be a comedian. Naturally, Caillou replied nonchalantly, my timing is flawless. Had we an audience, some would have to leave to change themselves. Yeah, because of the shit in their pants, shot back the blonde. The AI gave a small glower as he shrank before sighing. Touché, Kit. Outside the mindscape. I said move. Chase growled to the trench coat wearing teen that had introduced himself as Pestilence. The teen reached up and adjusted his glasses with a pasty hand before he replied in his monotone. And I informed you that we are S.H.I.E.L.D. agents acting under current Director Hill. We were preparing for a mission after retaliating against an attempted strike on the helicarrier. Your youngest runaway, Molly Hayes, acted irrationally and attacked him after he stopped Flag Smasher, Pestilence replied before looking at the unconscious girl, in fact. I'm in every right to arrest her here and now for attacking a member of the X-Men. What? Bullshit. Chase smartly countered, pointing a gloved finger at the entapath before he said, you ain't got anything on us. You're genius, I'm insulted at your grammar, Pestilence muttered before batting the hand away. I could easily claim she attacked him because he was a mutant. Racism. She'd get 10, 20 years at most. "You heartless bastard," Chase snarled, clenching his fists, "what about him, huh? He practically suffocated Nico." "I'll have a team look into it." "You Mithurfu hey, assholes." The two arguing males turned to look at the glaring Reed as she knelt next to a frightened Sally, who was kneeling worriedly at the unconscious Naruto's side, before the girl that introduced herself as Taya continued, "Keep this up and I'll have Hill throw you both in jail for disturbing the peace. Go check on the civvies will ya? Cool off." Chase clenched his teeth and looked at the impassive Pestilence, who nodded when they locked eyes. This would be finished later. When the two testosterone-filled heroes left, Taya sighed and rubbed her head with her hand. She never agreed to play peacemaker for this little group. Hell, she'd rather be in a hotel with War, sharing a room. Whoa, where'd that train of thought come from? Glaring at the unconscious blonde with her brown eyes, Taya muttered, "Damn bastard. He choke you, too?" A curious Nico Minoru asked as she rubbed her neck. Taya opened her mouth to reply before a rather X-rated memory entered her head and she closed it with an audible click of her teeth. Nico blinked in confusion as the Reed's face slowly matched her hair color. Finally, Taya grumbled out, "You could say that how's your neck?" "Sore, but it's expected," Nico admitted, sending a frown to the unconscious mutant's way, sodded Molly. "Yes, that little brat started this," snapped the irate teenage girl before the witch could get out the question, she attacked him after he put that down. Nico winced and lowered her hand slightly before looking at the unconscious girl, who was being kept safe by the still resting dinosaur. Never before had Nico been disappointed in Molly. Not only did she rush into that fight, she started a fight with someone who was both an X-Men and apparently a SHIELD agent. Those were big groups that would have no problem taking them down, even with their Skrull ally and the Runaways' obscure powers. "Or sorry." The soft voice made the two older girls look to the youngest mutant there. Sally's normal green eyes had red lines in them and her cheeks were stained from crying. After the blonde, War as Sally called him, had fallen unconscious. The girl broke down worried that she killed him. It was 10 minutes later that the two other SHIELD agents, Taya and Pestilence, managed to breach her shield and pull a recovering Nico out before the Reeds started to, unsurely, comfort the young girl. Nico shook her head after that short flashback and looked at the girl called Famine. "Well, what was that?" "Bor's sorry he choked you," Sally repeated quietly, "he's sorry he hurt your friends." Taya, curious, crossed her arms and asked, "And how do you know this?" Sally blinked and stared at Taya as if she had asked the dumbest question in the world. After a moment, before Taya could snap at the girl, Sally beamed, "'Cause War told me so, Muse." Nico looked at Taya, who groaned and palmed her face in embarrassment before asking, "Your cover is Muse." "I don't want to fucking talk about it," growled the Reed before looking up when helicopters were heard. The sun hid the details of the chopper before Taya's eyes adjusted and she sighed in relief when the familiar SHIELD logo was spotted on the underside of the cockpit. The helicopters landed a few feet away, their propellers being kept on while agents jumped out and went to secure the area. Chase and Pestilence both returned just as Dum Dum Dugan walked out of the nearest chopper. Tipping his bowler cap, he called over the helicopter's loud props, "Heard you needed a lift back to Xavier's. Bringing friends along?" Before anyone could reply, Nico spoke up, "Yeah. Got room for 3 kids and a dinosaur." Dugan chuckled before crouching down to pick up the unconscious Naruto and slung him over his shoulder. He turned around and began walking back to the transport before calling over his shoulder, "This ride isn't waiting for you to finish shopping. Get on the chopper." Nico went onto the same helicopter as Taya, Sally and Pestilence, who still refused to give his real name, while Chase rode with the unconscious Molly and a still very sore Lace in the second one. Naruto groaned as he slowly came to, several scents hitting his nostrils. Most of them were familiar, which was good, but then he noticed a honey-like scent he memorized since his 14th birthday. Ah, he was half naked. That would explain the scent of female arousal. Must be Taya as she was the only maid he remembered being in the vicinity. The beer scent was Logan. No brain needed for that connection. There was a strong winter scent and a faint one followed by leather from a sports car's seat. Emma Frost and Scott Summers were in the room. That meant the woodsy scent belonged to. "Welcome back, Naruto," a humored voice that cut his thoughts off said, "We of the living world thought you had forgotten about us." "You are right, McCoy," muttered the blonde as he rubbed his head. A plastic cup was held out and Naruto took it, gratefully swallowing the liquid within it. Finished, he crushed the cup and tossed it to the nearby bin. Naruto blinked before scanning the faces of those in the room. "I have to hand it to you, Mr. Uzumaki," an amused Emma Frost said, "I've never seen so little collateral damage when a mutant fights." Naruto rolled his eyes, "Yeah, thanks for that, but you talking to me like I'm Drive. Banner doesn't really make that feel better." "She's right though," Scott cut in from his spot seated next to his lover and co-headmaster, "you kept casualties down to a record minimum. I think only a few were injured by stray bullets." "You'd think people would leave when they hear a minigun," Logan idly commented, receiving looks from his peers. "What? I'm just saying the people should wake up and smell the coffee. Whirring sounds along with many gunshots equals lots of pain." "I'm with the fucking drunk on this one," Taya chipped in from her spot on the wall to the right of Naruto's bed. "Civvies are fucking retarded." "I like her, Gaki," Logan said with a chuckle, "she's got attitude." Naruto chuckled as well as he pushed himself to a fully upright position. His right arm shot out and his aura wrapped around Taya's waist before he pulled her to sit in his lap. Ignoring the embarrassed scowl on his newest mate's face, the blonde gave Logan a feral grin. "It shows in the sack. Might have to make sure our rooms are soundproofed." He let out a grunt as Taya smacked the back of his head. "Yes, well, as much as I enjoyed that visual," Emma grumbled, frowning as Taya's face flushed and she looked away. The headmistress continued, "I just wanted to inform you that your teammate returned to help Hill clean up the helicarrier. Sally is upstairs being taught some math by Prodigy. Your guests are in the danger room with the new X-Men." Naruto hummed, keeping his arms around Taya's waist, much to her embarrassment, as he thought before he nodded. "Yeah, we'll go talk to them in a bit. So 45 minutes. 45 min, oh god." Emma gasped before closing her eyes and blushing. "Could you please get some sort of control over yourself?" "I would if you all got the fuck out," murmured the blonde mutant. The headmistress of Xavier pinched the bridge of her nose as she stood. Without another word, Emma Frost left the infirmary, quickly followed by a worried Scott Summers, an amused Hank McCoy and a snickering Logan. As soon as the door sealed shut, Naruto spun Taya around in his lap and gave her a hungry grin. The grin sent shivers down her spine. "What's taking him so long?" complained a very impatient Hellion as he watched Chase and Rockslide have a thumb war, Rockslide's massive hands being matched by the gloves on the runaway's hands. Hellion crossed his arms and huffed as he leaned against a railing in the observation bay. "Oh, relax, Julian," Mercury said to the teen with a smile from her spot seated on a chair next to Nico and Molly, asking them what California is like. "Naruto's gonna show up. And when he does, you can get your ass handed to you like always," Surge helpfully chimed in, getting a glower from the telekinetic. "What? You know you will. Hell, only Cecily has been able to get him to fall to the mat. By the way, how did that feel again?" "Shut up, Nori." The Mercury-based mutant hissed while her face reddened slightly. The gauntleted electricity-controlling mutant hummed innocently while Julian looked between the two in confusion. "Am I missing something?" he asked. Elixir patted his friend on the shoulder in sympathy. "No, Julian, it's probably for the best that you don't recognize what the rest of us do," the golden boy said with a smile before looking at the door as it opened. "Oh, hey. He's here. Finally, now I can. Who the hell is she?" Julian asked as his jaw dropped when Naruto walked in with Taya using him as a crutch. The blonde mutant wore his usual X-Men attire Beast gathered for him, but the new girl wore a pair of men's shorts and a shirt that looked several sizes too large. The limp she had was obvious, and it made the new X-Men wonder what had happened. "I fucking hate you," the redheaded girl snarled to the blonde once he had set her in a chair. Naruto chuckled and brushed a bang of her hair out of her face, electing a blush from her and a frown from a certain silver-bodied girl. "That's not what you were saying a few minutes ago," the blonde said in response, before looking at the gathered group. "Ah, the runaways, well, 3 of you. The Dinosaurus with Sally. Lace has to rest," Chase growled, his fists clenching. "It's not every day that she's thrown through a car." Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "Ye sorry about that." "Whatever," the teen brushed it off with a scowl as he walked to the other runaways. Molly had her own frown on her face, but Nico looked at her intently and it fell. The girl walked to him and hesitantly tapped his arm, getting the blonde mutant's attention. Arching a brow, Naruto waited patiently. "I am sorry." And that was what he was waiting for. Giving her his small smile, Naruto reached out and patted Molly on the head before he spoke. "As am I. You're not that bad, kid. A bit hot-headed, but that'll go away with time. Some advice. Don't charge at someone you know nothing about." Molly blinked in confusion before frowning and rejoining Chase and Nico. Naruto looked from the young mutant before eyeing the user of the mystic arts. He approached her and crouched in front of her, eyeing her neck and getting her to blush at his intense stare before he stood and stepped back. To the shock of everyone present, Naruto bent forward as a traditional Eastern native would and said, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me for losing myself in the battle." Afterwards he said something in Japanese that made Nariko fall over to the side from her place standing. Still recovering from her surprise, Nico blinked before averting her eyes out of being uncomfortable. "Why yeah, you're forgiven, or whatever. Just stop bowing." With that, Naruto stood upright and gave Nico a winning fox-like smile, of course. 20 minutes later, the runaways, a beaming Sally and a resting Taya, were in awe as all of the members of the new X-Men were on the ground in pain. Naruto stood in the middle of the danger room with a few scratches on him, though they were from the room itself and not the students. He had dropped out of the war zone and crossed his arms. That was the saddest excuse for a fight I have ever been a part of. Ugh, was the collective groaning response. Nariko. You're the leader of these guys, he ticked off to the blue-haired girl that was holding her head. Don't let Hellion and Rockslide brush your instructions aside. I assumed you'd be taking control of these idiots while I was gone. Tai groaned out the electricity manipulator before she succumbed to unconsciousness. The blonde winced when he saw her breathing even out, wondering if he put too much in that last punch to her head. Nice. Give the girl a concussion. That'll get you laid. Oh, fuck you. Nah, I'll pass, kid. Ignoring his perverted AI's snickering, Naruto turned his attention to the two common teammates and spoke, Hellion, Rockslide, your insubordination will be punished. When you get your strength back, we're going to run your favorite simulation. Oh man, Rockslide groaned as he reattached his hand. Hellion just became pale and whimpered. Looking to Elixir and Dust, the blonde gave a light smile, you two did well as support members. Keep up the good work. The Elixir muttered as he put his healing abilities to use to help Dust pull herself together after one of Naruto's attacks sent her particles flying. Naruto then looked at Prodigy and Mercury, both of which were the least injured, but injured nonetheless. Mercury was slowly reforming her right arm after Naruto melted it with his aura. Prodigy, having borrowed Naruto's knowledge and skills in hand-to-hand, had a few bruised, if not broken, ribs and a possible concussion. The gleam of approval reflected in the AI-blessed mutant's eyes. They kept him busy while Surge tried to come up with various formations to attack him with. Prodigy was a natural leader, but he lacked the confidence needed to be a good one. Perhaps a few missions with him in command would change that, though that would have to be run by Frost and Summers. Naruto then looked at Mercury, who had a fire in her eyes when she came against him. He wasn't sure where it had come from, but he was sure that it was a much harder fight than he was used to. Though, she needed more one-on-one sessions against opponents with superheated abilities and practice pulling herself together. Although sadistic, he knew a few methods that could help with that. After all, it was how he got his healing factor to the speed it was at today. Well, you two have a few things to worry about, but teamwork is not one of them, Naruto praised with a smile, earning a pained one from David and a shy one from Cecily. He continued by addressing the other new X-Men, now, I have an assignment for you all. A 3,000-page report on why the X-Men use teamwork and get full credit for it. Cecily and David, however, only need 1,500 words. Along with that, I want each of you to look within yourselves and ask what you could do to be a better team player. Then, incorporate that into your report. He's worse than Logan, Hellion thought with a groan before asking with blatant disapproval, anything else, teach. Naruto's eyes narrowed as a sadistic smirk crossed his face, yes, Julie, there is something else. Next week I'm going back to California with the Runaways and S.H.I.E.L.D. Whoever gets 100% on the paper can come with me and I'll fund the entire trip. Clothes, food, fuel you wanted, I'll buy it. Think about it, kiddies. The paper's due in 2 days. What if Naruto X Emma Frost in Marvel end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.